And I tell you what, I've been out of touch for the past few weeks. I mean, I'm not really getting a good feel for what's going on with what they're going to do. I'm starting to read stuff that scares me now, that we'll see.
I haven't really heard much out of the front office, which is a good thing in my opinion, but it's kind of odd. So, Booze, where'd we leave off last time?
I honestly don't recall.
Michael Williams is the second-rated prospect on my board.
Where do y'all suppose the yacht is right now? Think they're going to be on the water during the draft?
Now, that was only during COVID.
In free agency.
Oh, so welcome to the 2025 Pre-Draft Show. We're looking back at some of the moves that's been made in off-season. Some of the more notable losses. Of course, number one is Zach Martin retired. Second is DeMarcus Lawrence, original Hot Boy, is no longer Dallas Cowboy. Brandon Cooks, Jordan Lewis, Chauncey, but not missing nearly as many folks as they did last year ago. But our additions in free agency kind of caught some of us off guard. They actually filled some holes and maybe put them in a pretty good situation for the draft. So what are y'all's feelings on the team's approach leading up to the draft?
Better than what we saw before, right? Last year, this year, but still, collection of Midland, free agency and veteran, plugging some holes. But they did what they typically will do, but they didn't do last year. They went in the draft with holes. This year, they pretty much, you could say, they plugged him with some things, so it shouldn't be that bad. Just now they got to make sure they're doing what they need to do and not going crazy.
I think last year was a bit of an outlier because, I mean, most years they tend to try to plug holes. They just do it in a cheap way. They don't go after big-time difference makers, just kind of guys who are, maybe average starters, maybe not even average starters. Last year, it seemed like one of those years similar to when they traded Cooper and cut Collins. They traded Cooper for basically nothing, where they were just kind of so frustrated and mad at how the season ended, just being the 2023 season, losing to Green Bay in the first round, that they almost like seemingly pout and say like, well, they just throw their hands up. We're just gonna not do much, or we did all we could do, and look what happened, and so we're gonna take a step back. I think last year was one of those weird off seasons. This year, they were a little more aggressive as far as making moves quickly and the trades and those sorts of things. But I think it was more in line with what they've done in the past, leading up to 2021, 22, 23. So nothing amazing, it's nothing to slit your wrists about. But, at the end of the day, this team does not find difference makers in free agency. So they wholly rely on the draft to do so. Dante Fowler is probably one of the better players they've signed in free agency over the last 5-7 years. So that was at least something. But ultimately, he's still relatively limited player. Mainly speed rusher. You don't want him obviously in on 2nd and 5, 3rd and 2, those sorts of downs. So they plugged some holes, but they can. Steven loves to say, "Oh, we can draft pure. We can draft pure," which maybe you could take that stance, but I think that's honestly, truly just like a cop out, and I think it's just him saying what he thinks people want to hear, basically. Even though we don't have any, it's not like we're slated to start, a second year UDFA anywhere. But there are certainly places where we could use upgrades.
Yeah, and the interesting thing is when we sign people, it's never to anything more than like a 1-year deal. So what always bothers me about our free agency, it's like, sure, you plugged a hole for maybe a season at best, if the player actually works out, but you got the same exact holes again next year that you're going to have to try to fill with 1-year players unless you nailed a bunch of draft picks that can kind of fill in long term.
Yeah, and that's actually one of the reasons, we were talking about Walter Nolan on the board earlier today, that I'm not that enthused with taking someone like him at 12. If we traded down to 20, 24, whatever, and took him, that's one thing. I would still prefer Grant, Harmon, so on and so forth. But one of the few guys that they gave a multi-year deal to in free agency was Solomon Thomas, who is a passable backup, 3 technique, he's a good interior pass rusher. Not great against the run, of course. He's only about 290 or whatever. But the fact that obviously gave Osa a big contract, gave this guy a 2-year deal, which is not their norm in free agency, just makes me lean towards defensive tackles that aren't liabilities against the run. So
it's just too much. There's a lot of stuff they got to get, squared away, and I don't think they can do it in the draft. Now, granted, they did decide this past year to, spend a little bit of chump change in free agency, but I don't know, it's more of a shut the fuck up type of move than anything else, because they really didn't do any. They didn't get. They got bodies, but they didn't get anything that's going to go, oh my god, game changing.
You're right, though. It's like,
did not
you wanted free agents. There you go. Are you happy now?
It was more like Goof Son saying, "Here, you motherfuckers, deal with this shit." Granted, some of the moves they made were okay, I think, but again, I'm overly optimistic for whatever reason.
Yeah, I like getting Fowler back. I mean, not expecting the production that he had last year in Washington, but he had turned into a reliable rusher.
I'm glad Lawrence is gone.
Yeah,
done with that guy. If they sign him back for like a year or two more of the Hot Boys, I think I would have lost my mind. They let him go, which is good.
With Lewis gone too, there's that old guard is gone.
Well, that's
turning that
the way
defense
the NFL
over.
is. You should turn your entire team over in 4 years, and we kind of function on a 5.5 year, 6 year schedule. We keep people longer than we should. Some of the younger guys we can't sign because of the salary cap. The whole thing there, you're going to turn your roster over every 4 years. So the thing there is they haven't quite adjusted that yet. They kind of stuck on to older folks, and the thing is to sign them before their contract becomes due. Don't.
Yeah.
I mean, the whole thing with Prescott, they let everything run down. Don't be stupid. Just sign them if they're cheap, then fine. Operate that way. Sign them when they're cheap. Sign them younger. That's what Philly did. They did that for years. They'd sign them a year before they ran out. They'd sign them up and re-up them. Didn't always work out, but that's how you secure the talent before getting down the deadline and having to pay out the ass.
And the thing about Philly, though, is when it doesn't work out, well, shit, they kind of shake it off and get back into the next plan,
It's play money. It's play money. That difference is Dallas looks at like it's real money. It's like
playing with their own money.
It's the Joneses family money. Because probably they're probably not as rich as we think they are. They're probably just cash poor. Think about it. Stupid ass stadium. No, Jones's wife buys all this artwork from that. There's money being wasted there. They behave worse than the Raiders do. And Al Davis's kid has no money. I mean, that's the weirdest thing is they biggest and the baddest team in the NFL. They should be able to swing their balls around, but they don't.
Well, I mean, he could sell it. He could have some cash.
Yeah.
That'll never happen.
All right, so good to be talking again. It's been a bit. Things are a little different now, so yeah, we got a lot to talk about.
What's different? The team, you mean?
Yeah, new coach. New philosophy. Everything's
Is anything
different.
really different though?
See, I'm trying to be all optimistic here, man, and you're just heading me down that path.
Yeah, I mean, I try to be optimistic too, but it's like, it's once you've been around this team for as long as we have, it's kind of like, yeah.
The thing we're going to see with Schottenheimer's kid is whether or not he's Garrett 2.0 or something. I don't know. I want to believe that he's got a good coaching staff together. I'm excited by some of the hires, but been burned once. The thing that's different about this is it's not like it was with Garrett. I mean, Garrett basically brought in, people his father knew or, older coaches heading out. These are some younger coaches. So maybe we'll see if it's a little different. That's where my optimism comes from. You can look at K-State and you can look at what North Dakota State did for years. And yeah, it's interesting.
And so the defense we'll be fine. I mean, Eberflus is a good coach. He has his guys and he has a scheme, and it'll be, I think, high enough floor. We're not gonna have, I don't think, a completely dominant defense unless we build a
No, it'll
dominant
it'll be
front
like
four.
Zimmer's was last year when they figured it out.
Yeah, it's
Once
a
Zimmer
good
figured it out,
defense.
yeah, they'll be decent enough. And I'm not expecting a world caliber defense out of them. The offense is going to have to get it done again, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, I think the main, I mean, you alluded to it. My main reason for optimism is what they're doing with the offensive line and like the focus on that, with the offensive coordinator basically being a glorified offensive line coach and having an offensive line coach beneath him. But you guys know, for like almost every time we do this each year, I talk about how what really sets the elite offenses apart from the average to good ones is the offensive line play and the way they kind of manipulate defenses with the offensive line by making runs, look like passes, so on and so forth. And McCarthy touched on it a little bit. How much of that was really coming from him versus Schottenheimer, it's hard to know, or how much is Schottenheimer just parroting what McCarthy was saying, it's hard to know. But this is the first time that I've actually seen a devoted focus to really revolutionizing or changing the way the offensive line plays here and bringing in these outside ideas and these fresh ideas, because Arizona's offensive line, they did not have top talent. Connor is a good but not great running back, and they had one of the best running games in the league the last couple of years. And Kyler, it wasn't because he was running 150, 200 times a season either. I'm bullish on that. We'll see how it turns out, but I think that's like the biggest upside at the moment.
Yeah, the
Yeah,
coaching
I mean,
selection is definitely a reason for optimism, but I think to
well, it's
Sim's
because
point
we
of
don't
kind
know.
of
It's
right,
because we
right,
don't
right,
know. I mean, honestly, I prefer this than to think, oh my God, is Monty Kiffin going to resurrect his
exactly.
Super Bowl winning? I mean, that's
Uh,
the thing. And now I will say this about Eberflus: I don't trust him even as much as I did Zimmer. Believe it or not, I just think there's some of the schemes, some of the things he believes in. I'm not convinced that he would have been the best selection, but I mean he was there and they knew him, so I figured that kind of lays into it. I'm not all jazzed about him.
I don't know. I mean, I think I'm comfortable with him. I'm not. I don't know. I wouldn't say
Well,
I'm
okay,
jazzed necessarily,
comfortable.
but I
Yeah, I was
think.
comfortable with Zimmer. I was
But I
comfortable
think.
with Zimmer.
I think if last season wasn't so disjointed, and the going from Quinn to Zimmer, as far as like the philosophy is kind of almost one end of the spectrum to the other, with Zimmer being way more focused on a gap contained, focused on the run, whereas Quinn is just all upfield immediately. I think if Zimmer would have came back this year, the defense would have been roughly somewhere around 8 to 12 in the league, if not slightly better. I think it would have been a good defense. It's just, it took some time to get there. They had all the injuries. I mean, basically all of our defensive ends were out. So yeah, I mean, Eberflus basically runs the same. He's not as good of a coordinator as Fangio, but he basically runs the same type of scheme. What you need for that is an elite pass rush. Do we have that? It's arguable. We have an elite. Obviously Parsons is elite. The Big Zilla is really good. We need to add more around it. Fowler is fine. But that's really what it comes down to, because these guys aren't bringing a bunch of pressure. They're relying on the front four to win. And if they do, it looks great because you have 7 back in coverage. So that's, to me, really where the focus should be defensively. But, not having a Diggs for God knows how long this season is probably going to push them towards a corner. But, hey.
They leaked a little video today I saw where Diggs is running around looking really slick and everything. So
Hey, let's hope.
they're gonna have to get another cornerback anyways. So
Yeah.
yeah,
I
with
mean,
Diggs and with losing Lewis, used to be
well,
kind of a position of strength on the team, but
all I know is I
Yeah.
don't want the seatbelt being one of my 3 corners on the field at
Yeah.
any given time. Thank you very much. So
I do. If we could count on Diggs to be healthy, I mean, of course, there's always injury risk here and there. If we could count on Diggs to be healthy, I would be relatively comfortable with him, Bland in the slot, Elam the other outside corner. Elam's not great, but you could work around him. He's as your third best corner. It's you would like to upgrade, but it's not like a 5 alarm fire. But the uncertainty with Diggs. That's what do you do with it exactly? It's hard to know.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, they're showing videos. I mean, you know how it rolls with these guys. They'll show them running around and they're looking great, and all of a sudden they're on pup for the first 6 weeks of the season. I'm not really sure what to make of Diggs' thing. I mean, that's something I don't think is being talked about enough. That
Well, it's the
is
second
going to
year
be
in a row, right?
well, it's going to be a problem. And
yeah.
they signed him and everything. I mean, his shelf life is next to zero. I wouldn't look at him being on this team 3 years from now. Something's going to happen. He's either going to get hurt or they're going to be tired of it. So, I mean, let's be honest, he's not a truly great corner. He's a gambler, and it worked under with with Quinn. It worked. Now I'm not even really sure about Bland, to be honest with you. We'll see how it works, but the whole what we had was secondary with Quinn, injuries, the way it's heading now. We may need a strong, not a superstar corner, but someone who can function in the zone coverages that Eberflus does. I mean, it's not the same. We're not going to be running press. We're not going to be gambling and intercepting the ball and running down the field and throwing your hat down and yeehaw. That's not how it's going to be. That's what they struggled with last year. You could tell early in the season they didn't understand how to deal with that, how to deal with assignments and being disciplined and not gambling. And that's one reason why they didn't bring Harris back as the DB coach. That's not how they want to do things. I don't know this new guy. I don't know how that's going to work. I mean, we'll see how it goes. But I just think we're going to have a much more conservative defense and try to grind the ball and be boring, old-fashioned, kind of like Schottenheimer's dad. You grind. That's how they played. The teams that he had with Cleveland, that's what they did. They ran. They had two backs, Kosar, and they ran. And they played, and they just were stout defense. They weren't superstars. So we'll see how it goes. I just think that Schottenheimer has a sense of what he wants to do more so than Garrett. I don't know what the fuck Garrett wanted to do. I really don't. He
was flying by the seat of his pants.
No, he's just some silver spoon shithead that got in the right situation. There was never a sense of this is what Jason Garrett wants to do, and he coached for us for 10 years, y'all. 10 years.
Long
10
years.
long years. Jesus. And we still, I bet to this day, you can't tell me what the hell is damn. It was whatever happens. And that 1 year we started running the ball. Murray, you had Romo,
there's Elliott too.
No,
it was 14 and 16.
No,
you got to give him credit for both. Well, I don't actually. No, you don't give him credit. But we had two
I give him credit for nothing. For
Lightning
nothing
in a bottle.
We did have
0
2 years.
No, God.
Come on,
God.
We did. No,
that 14 team was also the pinnacle of the O line. The Fred Martin Tyron line.
That was
them.
That was about as best as you're going to see, honestly. Right. And the defense, I mean, was dog shit. I mean, you had Mincy and a bunch of the other dipshits that
Sean Lee was out for the season.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. He had everything. That's so sad. And see, the thing is, we hired fucking McCarthy after that guy robbed it all from us by challenging that. And, that's just karma. That's how it works out. Awful.
Garrett's whole philosophy was just trying to recreate the 90s Cowboys. He literally had nothing aside from that. Like, that was really it. So
yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right. But I guess we need to start talking about Garrett because he wounded us for 10 years. Let's move on to Schottenheimer. Now, Schottenheimer, he's goofy. I hate to say it. Maybe I'm just getting old, but it actually is. It's kind of charming. You could tell he's basically parroted everything he learned from Pete Carroll.
Yeah.
He looks like he talks like him. He wants to hug everybody like him. And, that was the interesting thing because I thought, honestly, we had a shot at hiring Carroll. Then they pivot. And I think it kind of screwed up some of the team a little bit too. Even Prescott. He was like, yeah, he's been around here for a couple of years. And I don't know if they Did Prescott campaign for him? I don't know, but it was just odd how that materialized. I firmly thought they would, the Belichick thing, no, but I don't think they wanted truly to bring McCarthy back. I think that was they were stringing him along, whatever. But it's just interesting how it all rolled out. And now I don't know what to think of it. Now I'm kind of stuck like I was Dave Campo year one, and well, I knew Garrett would be a failure, but Dave Campo year one, I was optimistic back then in my youth.
Yeah, I think just purely if we're talking demeanor, Carroll, I think he reminds me a little bit of him, but also like Harbaugh is like this goofy, dead type rah rah stuff. God knows if it'll work or not, but I mean, I think schematically, going back to what you said about grinding the ball and a little bit more conservative on defense, if he can deliver on what he kind of threw out there in his initial press conference about talking about like the condensed splits of the receivers, which is he basically said that like what he wants to do is mimic in some form the way the 49ers, the Rams, and those offenses look, obviously, all the rage, whatever. But like the stuff he's saying to the average fan, that they wouldn't associate like, okay, the condensed splits and the offensive line and the way it's working with those offenses right off the bat. But if he can deliver on that, I think it can work. If he's just like we've heard in the past, people say it and nothing really comes of it, then I think we know how it will go. So to me, that's really what it comes down to. If he can really deliver on all this big talk of making the offense look more like that, and making the offensive line look a little bit more like that, mixing up the concepts and all this, I think it could work. If not, we'll be hiring a new coach in about 3 or 4 years, I assume, or unless it. I forget. I don't know how long the contract is, but I assume Jerry will, not want to pay two coaches. So however long the contract is, that's what we'll be looking for a new one.
He'll get a couple years, then we'll see. But the thing again, I don't know why I'm optimistic about it. I guess because it's different. It's not
Yeah.
okay. Here he is hiring some old, crusty coaches to come in and relive the glory days. I mean, he actually has younger coaches. He has some of the concepts are coming from college, and how the college game goes. It affects the NFL. I mean, you have those players coming in; they can't do these certain things. These coaches might know, a little more of the limitations. So, if they dumb it down to the point, I wouldn't care if they ran the wishbone. I just
Yeah, he
want to win.
seems he seems to be coming at it from the right, with the right mindset, where he's like you said, bringing in coaches that he has no direct experience with, that he just kind of like
He's
came
like, you're
in.
smart. Yeah, you're
Yeah.
smart.
He
I like
likes
what you
their
do. I
philosophy.
like your concepts. I don't know you from Adam. You're not my daddy's best friend's cousin who got married twice. So it's none of that.
Yeah.
So that was the thing that Garrett had a problem. He had no relationships with anybody. He really didn't. You saw that. You get these old veteran coaches come in, and that's how he changed. He had no, at least Schottenheimer, he's been around for a bit. His dad's been around, obviously had connections and everything. Maybe he learned. Maybe it's the right time for him.
I
But
mean, Schottenheimer was a hot candidate, for a short period of time, but I also think he gets a really bad rap for his time in Seattle. Like Russell Wilson literally had the best years of his career as far as statistical production and so forth. Obviously, early in his career, he was a game manager, but Wilson was at his best with Schottenheimer. When he left, that Wilson started going downhill, and then obviously when he went to Denver, he just completely imploded, and he hasn't really recovered from that. So to me, I mean, I'm not saying Schottenheimer's some offensive guru; he's going to be amazing, whatever. But the amount of blame that he gets, let Russ cook do all this stuff. It was based on the assumption that Russell Wilson was an elite talent quarterback, and Schottenheimer's offense was holding him back, running the ball, not giving Wilson enough opportunities to be aggressive. And it's like in hindsight, maybe that was a good thing, So
I don't know what to make of that whole situation up in Seattle. I mean, the whole let Russ cook. Honestly, I have never respected. I mean, Wilson. He was never a good quarterback. I mean, he'd fumble the ball. There were so many things that were wrong, but the rest of the team was so good that it made up for it. And maybe you're right. Maybe he did get a bad rep. I don't understand what the whole Russ Cook thing was. Was he? I remember him going on a tear where he was like 300 yards passing for like 4 games, and they started running the ball again or something. And I don't know what happened, but I mean, that's the one thing, you know, as long as we have a philosophy, we are going to run the ball, we are going to mash you in the face, we're going to do these things. As long as they have a philosophy, that's a good starting point. And I can tell you one thing, and we never had that before. And honestly, we really didn't even have it with McCarthy. It was like, oh, we're going to do my West Coast ha-ha offense. I never
Well, first it
saw
was Kellen
shit.
Moore. It was
Yeah, it
basically Mike
was
Moore's
just
offense, and then
whatever.
trying to switch it.
Yeah, yeah.
It was very disjointed, and even it's hard to know what to make of it. So, I mean, we'll see. I'll say at the very least, I'm curious to see what the offense looks like under Schottenheimer. I think I know what the defense is going to look like more or less, but I think there's definitely upside, especially bringing in all these like different ideas on the with the offensive line and the running game. And the running game is going to be physical. Are we going to have the talent at running back? That's anybody's guess. But the running game, I think, will have a high floor just based on the sheer like physicality, will that will be instilled into the offensive line and into like the mentality of the offense. So.
And so this is the year they take the running back position seriously in the draft.
Maybe. I mean, what do we consider seriously? Like third round?
I
Not that
yeah,
we need a first rounder, but yeah,
no.
in the first 3 rounds, we need a
It,
running back.
I mean, you can get, I mean, with Williams and, with Miles Sanders, I mean, one of them's probably going to be in the next, what's the dude that flopped last year? Can't remember his name. Royce Freeman.
Freeman.
Yeah. But, I mean, I think you don't have to draft. I mean, with this draft, I mean, damn, you can get one in the 4th round. You can get Martinez, maybe in the 3rd. But you have to prioritize it where if your guy's going to come, if there's a run, they're going to need to get one because there's some good ones, really good ones in this draft.
Yeah, if we had a fourth, I wouldn't be concerned at all. My only concern is that if they pass it up in the third, that the talent might not be there in the fifth. There are a lot of guys that I would really like in the fourth. You mentioned Martinez. I think Devin Neal is one of those. Giddens is one of those. Jarquez Hunter is one of those. But will those guys drop to the fifth?
Why are you so high on Hunter?
He just reminds me a little bit of Kyron Williams, man. He's physical. He's low to the ground. He ran a lot faster than I thought he would. He ran like a 4.45. I thought he would be in the 4.5s.
He's one that's never grown on me. I mean,
yeah, he's just he kind of reminds me a little bit of Neal, where it's like limited athletically. He's not going to be a game breaker, but you can trust the guy to grind out 4 to 6 yards. He's going to be physical on the goal line. And he just kind of has a good feel for, finding little pockets of space to turn, 2 yards into 4, 4 yards into 5, 6. So, yeah, I wouldn't take him in the third, but he's in that group with all those guys that I just mentioned. Where if we had a fourth, I would love them. Obviously, if they fall to the fifth, that'd be great.
Yeah, you're just gonna have to start measuring where you want to take the running back because last year everybody started running the ball. All of a sudden, running backs became important again. So now you're going to see a run. You'll see some teams where, I don't buy the Hampton thing like Kuiper says to us. No, if we did that, I'd be upset, honestly.
At 12, no,
and it's not. He's not a bad player, but come on, to 12. I mean, but no. I mean, if you go into the 2nd round, you don't get your guy, then you're looking at Harvey's, and you're looking at, I don't think we're in the Scatabo market. But even you go deeper, you can get a guy. But the main thing they need to do is get a guy that can catch the ball. Because, Henderson would be perfect, but he's probably not going to last until our pick in the 2nd round. So, that's what we're dealing with. But there's some good backs that you can get that can catch the ball and be a good complement. If we're gonna run the kid from Denver, let him and Sanders carry the ball, and then have that guy. great. But I don't know. They you have to come out with another weapon. I'm more worried about wide receiver 2 than I am actually running back.
Yeah, I do think they're going to be really focused on, Schottenheimer's mentioned it, how important the passing game is. You want a guy who can contribute in the passing game, and that's Javonte Williams, I think, fits that. So I do think my instinct, my gut's telling me that they are probably going to wait to the third and take a guy like Harvey or Tootin or
Shooting in the third would be rough. I'd
Yeah,
have a
but I
problem
mean,
with
that's
that.
the thing. You don't have a fourth. You don't have a fourth. What are you
Well,
going
what
to
you can
do?
do?
What's the
Reach for the fumbler. He's a fumbler. He's a fumbler. Let's be real.
I'm just saying what I like. He would be low on my list in the third. Honestly, he would be. I would probably not. I'm just saying what I think they're going to do. I think they're going to target a guy who is. Luckily, I think Harvey should be there. I think Sampson should be there. I like both of them better. But that is what I think they're going to do. And if it were me, I would. I know we've talked about it a lot on the board. I would double up. If one of those guys that we talked about is there, if we take one of these guys in the third, and then one of these guys like Giddens, Hunter, Martinez, whatever is there in the fifth, I would 100% take two, back to back even, just because that's where the talent is, and
Oh yeah.
Williams and Sanders could be gone next year or
Um,
2026.
what's funny is we're sitting here talking about running backs and whatever. We're not going to take one in the first. So, what the hell are we going to take in the first? I don't want Will Johnson. I don't think he's a sound enough corner to take that high. And I'm starting to get a little bit concerned, honestly, because I thought, a few weeks ago, yeah, we'll get somebody decent. But now we may be at a point where hopefully we're not stuck. I'd love to trade down. I would give anything to trade down this draft.
Just real quick though, Boozer, are you saying that because you don't believe Gianti will be available at 12?
No, yeah, he's gone. Someone will take him.
He
He's
won't
gone.
make it past. I don't think he's
No,
going to make it past 10
Chicago,
if
Chicago.
he. Yeah,
L.A., Las Vegas.
yeah.
They'll take him. One of the two. One
Even
of
the
them.
Saints, I wouldn't be shocked if the Saints took him, given Moore's history here in Dallas.
They
Obviously
got no
Barkley.
quarterback, man. They're fucked.
I
So
Yeah, I
know.
think
they'll do
and
something.
Carr had didn't they just announce today something about his shoulder?
Yeah, and they'll
Press
do
or
something. But I mean, my thing here is that I just wish the class was better with a third quarterback that someone want to trade up for, get in there, and we could drop into the 20s and pick up another pick or two. But
The scenario I could see. I mean, we're not necessarily well positioned because Miami is behind us. Maybe someone might be worried about the Colts. I do think that if a second quarterback, Sanders presumably, but could be Dart even, goes to New Orleans, if we're assuming that the Raiders don't take him, the Giants are going elsewhere, but the Saints seem to be the most likely team in the top 10 to take a quarterback right now. If they do take one, I could see someone like the Steelers, teams like that getting a little bit antsy because I only think there's three first round quarterbacks. Some people may think Milrow, maybe the Steelers, who knows, but I could see someone getting antsy for Dart or even Sanders potentially.
uh, I that's what you're going to see. You're going to see these quarterback reaches. You'll see Milrow probably.
With Bo
Bless their
Nix
hearts.
going last year, what,
Yeah.
5 or 6 quarterbacks went in the top 12, top 14? It's hard for me to imagine that we won't get 2 to 3 going in the top 20-ish. So if
So
it falls the right way, someone might want to trade up, but it might not be with us just because who's going to be worried that Miami is going to take a quarterback? You know what I mean?
no, yeah, we're not in a good position at all. But I don't know. There's so much. There's enough talent that will help us in the right positions if we could trade down. I mean, staying at 12 and just taking whatever guy, it bothers me
Yeah,
a
it's a
little bit.
little.
But
I mean, I said it on the board like a couple weeks ago, where it's like I like a lot of these guys, but it just feels like you'd be taking someone outside of Genty and Graham, really. Almost anybody else who I like. I love Harmon. I really like McMillan and Golden. Uh, Johnson, I think, is a good cornerback prospect. I don't love him necessarily, but all these guys who are in consideration at 12, you feel like if you could just trade down to about 18 to 20 instead of McMillan or Golden, or probably one of them would even be there. But even if they're not, you could get Egbuka. Instead of Will Johnson, you could get Barron. Instead of Harmon, you could get Grant. And heck, Harmon might even be there if you trade down 6 to 8 spots. So it
Now
just
Harmon
feels
ain't gonna
like
be there. Harmon, he is a very clean prospect,
I've
and
been saying this for my two guys. I go back through whatever threads we have. My two guys, the entire season, going back to at least October, if not even into like late September, have been Genty. Obviously, everybody knows about him, and he's going to be long gone. But the other one was Harmon, and I think he is the most outside of Graham. He is the most well-rounded defensive tackle. He can play 1 tech. He can play 3 tech. I
he's
think he can
better
play
than Graham.
5 tech. He could be. He could be.
I think he's better than Graham. Honestly, Graham's going to be a little bit of fool's gold.
He's more physically
I would
explosive.
take him in a heartbeat, of course, but in terms of if you're looking at a pure defensive tackle that's going to be able to help you, there's not a big difference, honestly.
No, there isn't. There isn't, and I really don't know why Harmon has kind of been, undersold. And I mean, right now
West
it seems
Coast,
like,
West Coast
yeah, it could
bias
be, but Oregon was number 1 the whole year, but it could be
doesn't
that.
matter.
I mean, Michigan won the championship last year, so Graham, everybody's kind of known about Graham for like 2 years now. But excuse me, yeah, Harmon, he can rush, arguably even better than Graham. My big concern with Graham is that supposedly he played his whole career at 310, 315 or so. Goes to the combine, he's a little bit under
Yeah,
300. Not a, but
yeah,
like, what is going on with that? I don't really know. Harmon,
yeah.
weighed in, measured at exactly what you would have expected. He's like 315. He has the length, 34 plus inch arms. He has the height, which I think Eberflus likes. And I think he can get upfield and rush. He can take on double teams. He can do a little bit of everything. And for me, he's my top realistic choice at 12. Obviously, assuming Genty's
Well,
gone.
you got to look at how the Cowboys view things. They just signed Odigizua, so they just paid him. So they're looking for, of course, Takamazi to continue his development and growth. So I don't think they, you know, they're not going to spend a choice at defensive tackle at 12. I don't see it happening in a million years. All
I,
this
I
talk about Walt Nolan and all these other people. Nah. If they trade down, maybe, but they're not going to take a defensive tackle at 12. It's just not going to happen.
if they trade down, I could see it. I agree. I'd be very surprised at 12. I do think they're going to target D tackle depending on how things go in the first 3 rounds. I mean,
Yeah, yeah.
obviously there's only so many picks, but I do think they're going to target a defensive tackle. Hopefully they consider it at 12, but I do think they're pretty locked in.
Yeah, I think the hard thing with defensive tackle is like you want a guy that's going to make some plays that are going to impact the game when you're talking about a first round pick. So it's like I like Walter Nolan because he takes over games, but yeah, you're right. Ultimately, if you're pairing somebody with an Osa Digizua, you want a bigger guy, a guy that's going to make up a little bit of the Osa undersized deficiencies. Somebody that's just going to hold ground, but I just struggle thinking like we're going to burn a first round pick again within a couple year period on what we're hoping is a really great run defender, which obviously Mozzie's not even that.
Yeah, it would be a tough pill to swallow for sure. I mean, that's why we've talked about it plenty. To me, if you're sitting at 12, Harmon, if you're taking defensive tackle, he's the most well-rounded D tackle arguably in the draft. Graham is probably the best, but after Graham, I would say Harmon. It's the ideal mix. He can rush the passer. He's also big enough, strong enough at the point of attack. He can absorb double teams. I like Grant as well, but he definitely is not the pass rusher that Harmon is. Of course, Nolan and some of these other guys. So to me, Harmon is the only D tackle I would truly consider at 12. Obviously, Graham as well. If we traded down, okay, Grant then is in the mix. So ultimately, I don't think they're going to take a D tackle in the first round either way. It's such a deep class, and knowing how they operate, they tend to they don't, as much as they want to say BPA, we can draft pure, all these things. They do, and you saw it last year. You see it most years where they are sort of not necessarily assigning rounds to positions, but I mean, we saw it especially when they took Schoonmaker after Mozzie in the second. And they're very keenly aware of where positions are deep, and we can wait on this one, wait on that one, and I'm certain they've said it. I don't know if it was Steven or Jerry, maybe even both of them, and I'm sure they'll say it tomorrow at the press conference. D tackle, or they might call it D line, but D tackle especially, and running back are the two deepest positions, and it just. I would be very surprised if they took either of those positions in the first round. I mean, obviously, running back speaks for itself. Genty's not going to be there. You're down to Hampton, whatever. But D tackle, I could make the argument that Harmon should be at the top of in the conversation at the top of the board at 12. Well, we lost Booze, huh?
Yeah, we did lose. There he is. Hey, Booze, you back?
We all decided that we want Walter Nolan at 12, by the way. So we're
Yeah,
moving forward with that assumption.
Willing to move up.
Nolan, I don't want anything to do with, unless you flop down a little bit, and he's one of the guys that are last the Mohicans, so to speak. But I don't, he's not the 12th best player in this draft. That's what worries me when you see a defensive line that has 2 to 3 prospects on it and all are highly regarded, or 2 out of the 3 are highly regarded, and you never know how they play off of each other. And then that's how you end up with, oh, well, look at that awesome defensive line that Taco Chartland was on, so it kind of worries me a little bit. I don't see them going that direction unless, that's just the last option they have in a pretty massive trade down. I keep seeing that, Nolan is supposedly might go to the Niners. I doubt that. So, it's really, what we're left with. What I don't want to do is draft a interior offensive lineman or even a tackle, to be honest with you.
Even if they trade down?
Oh, if they trade down, of course, but not at 12. I'm not
Yeah,
taking
I agree.
Josh Simmons at 12. That would be ridiculous. Everybody's
He's
trying to
coming
talk
off
themselves
injury.
in. Yeah, well, all these tackle, all the offensive linemen, they're panicking because it's a really, once you get past the first layer, there ain't much. So they're going to go scrambling, and everybody's going to be, tripped over their own dicks to get to these linemen that aren't that good. If you go where the strengths of this draft are, I mean, that's not offensive line, and you can't talk yourself into saying, "Oh, I'm to the best of a average lot." It doesn't make any sense.
I think Simmons is really getting pushed up because there are almost no prototypical left tackles.
No,
Campbell doesn't
no,
have the arm length. He's not and his movement to me, and he has the height and the weight, but his movement and the power. Ideally, it's not what you want to have a left tackle when
nope.
you don't have the length. Membu has only played right tackle, so there's that. So everybody is. I think Simmons is a good prospect. He would go in the first round in most seasons if it wasn't for the injury.
Yeah, he's a
But
yeah, but he's
yeah,
not the. If I'm sitting there saying, "Okay, I got 12 football players to take in this draft," he's one of them. He ain't one of them.
oh no, I agree. If we're talking 12, the thing is, I wouldn't even really be that interested in Simmons if we drop back because to me, he's an offensive tackle only. We obviously have Guyton, we have Steele. Tyler could theoretically play left tackle. Are they really like you would be spending your first round pick on a guy who very possibly might not even play more than 100 snaps, barring injury, as a rookie. And I get, okay, it's obviously a very important position. Guyton disappointed a bit. My biggest issue is not so much his physical ability. I'm worried about where he's at in the head because he made a lot of stupid mistakes, especially late in the year. He was getting pulled out of games because of like procedural penalties, false starts, stupid things, not lining up on the line of scrimmage. So I get that. Steele has been a disappointment relative to his extension. But to me, are you really, with this roster, going to take a player who, if things go as you generally expect, might not even play a snap? So to me, I don't want an offensive lineman at 12 no matter what, unless, okay, Campbell, Membu falls, whatever. They're not going to fall at 12. If we trade down, I would prefer one of the interior linemen, Booker or Zabel, to Simmons, just because they're going to start day one. Right guard is not a huge hole, but a guy like Booker or Zabel, and that's a very interesting conversation to me because Zabel is the kind of guy who I think would have been the ideal fit basically any time over the last 10 years, running all the outside zone heavy schemes. He's similar a little bit to Martin in terms of played left tackle. not a tackle in the league. Great flexibility and movement
They're
skills.
talking about making him a center. Most teams are
So
talking about making
if
him a
you remember,
center.
they considered there was talk
Yeah.
about Martin
Beebe.
potentially playing center when he came out.
The thing with Beebe, if they're going to leave him, do they want to move him, then put someone
Nah,
else at center? They
Zabel
are.
will play guard. If we took him, he would play guard. I don't know about any other team, but if we took him, I'm certain they would play him at right guard. I would be shocked if they moved him to center and moved BB to guard. But the interesting thing is that to me, Booker is the kind of guy who I think fits the new coaching staff, or Adams and Riley, the way that they're not as zone heavy. They want to run a lot more like power gap, down block, pull around. It's a lot more like close quarter combat as opposed to like getting everybody moving in one direction and hoping a hole pops open. So it is I have no idea, obviously, how the team views them, but that's one of the things I'm most curious about, because I do think Zabel is like exactly what they generally over the last decade have looked for out of offensive linemen. Played a million positions. He started at about 3 or 4 different positions at North Dakota State. Of course, he has the tie to North Dakota State with our new offensive line coach, so there's that. But Booker, to me, like watching him, a lot of the things he was doing at Alabama is what I saw Arizona doing with their guards when I watched a little bit of them after we hired Adams. So it's interesting. And for the record, I would be happy with either one of them if we trade down. At 12, of course not, please.
Well, my thing here is I'm looking at who's available. 12. You got your golden, Tet getting concerned that they're not going to look at wide receiver. They're going to try that, great value approach again and get themselves another Jalen, whatever his name is, another Jalen. Yeah, Tolbert.
Tolbert is an okay 3, though. He's not a terrible player. He's not a complete bust. He's like a pretty decent.
He's not even better than Wilson was.
No, Wilson was a good third receiver.
He was a lot better. Outside of the testicular torsion game against the Steelers, that'll be his proud moment.
Yeah. I'm comfortable with him as our third receiver. He's just not what you want as your second receiver. It is what it is. He's not like a complete washout. Tristan Hill, whatever, is out of the league in 3 years. At 12, really realistically, I think we're looking at the 2 receivers, Golden, McMillan, and I go back and forth almost on a daily basis who I would take if they're both there. Mike Green, maybe Barron, maybe Will Johnson, Michael Williams. That's for you, C-Rock. I really don't know what they, aside from the 2 receivers and maybe a random defensive lineman that they really fall in love with. I just don't see where they go. To me, like, if you look at the betting odds, and I mentioned this last week or whenever we did the last one, it's relatively rare that they give odds for almost every team, and it's by like position for their first pick. And most of the time, the percentage probabilities are like for your first pick, it's maybe like whatever position, and there's like a 30-40% chance, whatever. Even less than that. For other teams, it's like 15-20% because it's relatively evenly distributed amongst 3 or 4 different positions where they're all around like 15-20%, whatever. For us, and there's some other teams that are very obvious. I think like Atlanta is pretty obviously going to take a defensive, a defensive lineman. But for us right now, receiver is almost like 60% to be the pick, which is pretty rare as far as like all these odds with the different teams and the positions go. So unless we trade back, and unless both of the top 2 are gone, to me, it's pretty straightforward. Or some random guy drops Membu, whatever, for some reason. But aside, if it goes how we generally expect, like, I don't see where they go, aside from receiver.
Yeah, and I'd love them to go wide receiver, but there's just something that, I don't know, it never seems like they really target a receiver. They just kind of wait for one to fall to them. So I have this distrust that they're actually going to go receiver. And if it's not receiver, I'm really not sure what direction they go at 12, except Michael Williams or Mr. Stewart, which both terrify the crap out of me. They're just high risk, high reward kind of players that, I don't know. When you're that talented, I just don't see how you can't produce more. But
well, Stewart for sure. Stewart is so like God. I went back. I watched a little bit of him, in like February or something, and I was just like, no, this guy is not it. But then, obviously I knew he was going to test well, and so he, did what he did, and okay, now people are talking about him borderline top 10, 15, whatever. Like, let me go back and look at him again to see did I like miss something. I did not miss anything. I mean, the guy is a ridiculous specimen. He might have the highest ceiling, arguably, of any player in this draft because he's such a he's basic. If he reaches his ceiling, he could be Myles Garrett. The question is, what is the probability that he reaches that ceiling? 10%, maybe 20 if you're lucky. Yeah, I mean, Stewart has no idea how to play football. Honestly, I mean, to some coaches that may be a good thing because you're thinking, wow, I can get my hands on this guy and within a couple months he's going to be firing. But it's also possible that there's just something that's not fully clicking. He just doesn't read the game well, whatever. He may be a really intelligent guy in general, but maybe just something about the game. Yeah, it's just the amount of time he spends on the ground, and the amount of time that he is just he's engaged with the offensive lineman, and it's like he almost doesn't, and he knocks the offensive lineman back 2 or 3 yards because he's so big and powerful. And you're like, God damn, this is looking good. Like, he's driving this guy into the backfield. Here comes the running back. He's going to, blow this play up, or he's going to, slow the running back's momentum. And this is going to be a, no gain or a loss. And then the running back goes by, and it's like he doesn't even see it. And he's just engaged the offensive lineman 2 or 3 yards in the backfield. And the running back is off, 4 or 5 yards downfield. So, yeah, to me, Stewart, he's a ridiculous specimen. He could be a Hall of Famer. I mean, he could be better than Abdul Carter. It's just, what are the chances that he reaches his ceiling? Not very high. Michael Williams, I think he's a better bet to reach his ceiling. You can tell he plays the game in a much more mature way than Stewart. But, I mean, I don't want either of them at 12, truly.
Well, I think my thing with Michael Williams is I think the ceiling's just not as high as I think he's portrayed to have. I mean, in terms of athleticism, he's not actually as elite of an athlete, I think, as we were kind of sort of led to believe. And then when you put that in the perspective of the low sack numbers, the low pressure numbers, I mean, I get some scheme issues, and maybe that's why he wasn't producing. But when I'm talking a first round pick, I want to see somebody that I've seen produce. And when you take a player and put him in a scheme where you can't really see that production, it's hard for me because I can watch other players. I can watch Walter Nolan and see, man, this is a guy that can take over a game. I can watch TJ Sanders even and just see this elite athleticism where he's just jumping a gap over and completely destroying an offensive lineman. And I watch Michael and I'm like, meh, he went unblocked and made a tackle. That's cool. But I don't see a guy that's just dominating the person in front of him. He's just kind of running down the middle and trying to kind of hold his ground or push back, and that's about it. So I think somebody's going to be really disappointed when they take him. But I've been wrong on Georgia players in the past, so maybe I'm just misjudging them based on their scheme.
Yeah, there are. I don't know if it was Shea or Breer, one of these guys today. Maybe even 2 of them. I think there were 2 different ones. Said that the league is a lot higher on Williams than whatever media fans. I mean, I'm not as down on him as you are, but I also do not think he should be the pick at 12. If they trade down to 20, okay, he's in the conversation for me. But yeah, I hope he goes before we pick, honestly.
Well, I mean, he's Javon Walker again. And if you look at Javon Walker, not Javon, what's the guy's name in Jacksonville?
Trayvon.
Trayvon Walker, yeah. I mean, same kind of thing. He blew up right at the end, and people were pretending something he wasn't, and he has all his potential. It's the same thing with Williams. So, stay far away from that. You trade down and you get him in the 20s, great, but not at 12.
I mean, McMillan and Golden, I really like both. Either one I'd be happy with. Of course, they talked about it'd be better if they could trade down or whatever. But I think it's really going to come down to those 2. And I hate to say it for you, but Will Johnson. I think it's going to come down to those 3, and maybe one of these DNs. It's hard to say.
It's a quick decision for me. I take one of the 2 wide receivers over Johnson.
I mean, the other part about that is almost can't wait until, if they're honestly sitting there and think they're going to be able to, okay, I'm going to skip, back I get, there's no reason to take it back, you know, no reason to take that position. But if you're talking about pick 44, what wide receivers are going to be there? Practically, let's take a look. Let me see. If you're talking at 44, you're talking to Higgins, Trey Harris type, Jack Beck, Noel, Kyle Williams. That's it. I mean, those are none of those guys I think have starting potential. So, it's really that the golden conversation and the tech conversation, going to be important.
I do think there's going to be a little bit of a run on receivers late first, early second. And something tells me that if we pass up on a receiver in the first, it's going to be slim pickings in the second. I love Kyle Williams more than most. And if we took him in the second, I wouldn't be thrilled, but I wouldn't be upset either. He really ideally should be going third, probably. But when you look at it, after you get past like Egbuka, Burden, they're not going to be there first in the second. I expect them to go 20s, early 30s, whatever. And I think what's going to happen is teams are going to be like, basically what you just said. Oh, if we want a receiver who might be able to start, we need to take them right now in the top of the second round, basically. And I think it's very likely that if we don't take a receiver in the first, we might be just looking at maybe one of those two or three names you just mentioned, maybe someone like Beck, which ultimately, given the strength in this class at defensive tackle, at running back, at different positions, and some of the guys I'm expecting to be available, like at linebacker, even Schwessinger in the second. To me, I would much rather take Tyleek Williams, Schwessinger, someone like that in the second than, oh, we really need a receiver. We got to take Trey Harris or this or that. So, uh, the way this class is just kind of stacked, I think you kind of have to, where we're positioned and where I expect these other guys to go. I mean, I could be wrong. Burden could be sitting there in the second. I don't love him in the first, obviously. If he's there in the second, please. But something tells me the board at receiver is going to be looking pretty bare, and I might want to, you know what? Fuck it. Tolbert's our two next year. It's going to suck, but let's hope we build up the rest of the team well enough to kind of like make up for it. So, if they want a receiver, they really better take one in the first.
Yeah, I'm actually kind of with you on that. It's like one of these things where if you don't get an impact receiver, somebody that immediately is going to step up and be a big time impact player, you're just kind of treading water. Maybe you get some marginal improvement over somebody like Tolbert, but I'm with you. I want a McMillan, I want a Golden, I want an Ibuka. Shoot, I'm with you on Burden in this. If he was available in the high second, I'd take him. I mean, I'm not high on him at 12 at all. I even like Higgins and Noel, but then you get down to Royals, who I like, and after that, I'm just kind of out. I just wait and see who falls to the fifth round at that point, especially when you can get, in my opinion, I think you get a high impact defensive tackle in the second round of this draft. Obviously, you can get a high impact running back probably second or third round. So it's one of those things where I think the first lines up so perfectly first to take receiver, but after that, there's probably going to be other players I'd be excited about, and I don't know that I'd be as excited about any of the receivers.
Corner scares me a little bit, even the depth. So it wouldn't surprise me if they started thinking corner. So once they're picked in the second, say for example they get, wide receiver first round, great. You prefer to get one of the better backs in the second, but you could wait. So then you start looking at corner maybe in the second, right? So then you're looking at, what did I read today? Benjamin Morrison. Hip injuries scare me, but he's kind of right now. If we had to have a game, I don't think Diggs is going to be able to play. I think it'll be, he'll be really soft through camp, and then you might see him in a game or two, and then he'll just hit something. I just have a feeling he'll be off, and then you got the seatbelt dude, and that's it. So you're kind of hurting there. Hate to say it, hate to go into a draft and say, hey, I need a corner, but kind of do. And then you start looking at what the corner class. Corner class is not good. Ravel, a guy like Ravel's injured guy is still one of the better prospects. Yeah, so that's another thing. That's another place where honestly, if you don't get a corner, and probably by probably by the second round, you're pretty much done. Because then you're looking at a couple of, nickel corner types, outside of, I think once you get to Ravel and then maybe the Florida State guy was slow. Then there's Morrison. You got Porter who's barely played, and then you're pretty much talking about second, third string corners the rest of the draft. There's really no stick out as freaks. There's the UT San Antonio guy maybe, but that's it. I mean, it's not the corner class. If you're even looking for depth, it's hard. It's hard for me to say, yeah, you can get one in the third round. Not really. I mean, by the time the top 100, you're done in this draft. It's just very weird.
Yeah, and almost if you're going to go corner in the third, it's like you kind of almost have to bypass it.
No, what's the point? That's the
Yeah,
thing, right?
yeah, you're looking more for like a George Lewis replacement at that point, where you're looking at like a Quincy Riley or a one of these smaller guys that's pretty good, like a Jacob Parrish. I don't think you're going to get a bona fide badass at corner to play the outside at that point, so you might as well just kind of wait it out for Diggs to come back and just suffer, a crappy outside corner until then.
Yeah.
If one of those guys, it seems like Amos, Hairston, those guys are going to go before our second. If they're there in the second, okay, fine. But it does seem like if we don't get a corner in the first two rounds, we're better off just waiting for rolling the dice with a fifth rounder and hoping he could be like our fourth corner who turns into maybe nickel starter by year 2 or 3. But you're not going to find any bona fide starters, really. It's unlikely, at least. After round 2, it seems like.
The receiver thing, we think we've already established that we're going to have to get that early or hope something slips. Now, the only thing that's, from what I'm reading and understanding, is that panic on the offensive line front. People are going to be, you probably have, I think I read somewhere, someone said 10 in the first, which is crazy to me.
10 offensive linemen in the first?
Combined, yeah. Within the first 2 rounds, you're pretty much you're done. Mm-hmm. So there's going to be your Zabel's the fall off point because the tackle class isn't thick. There's center class is next to nothing. I mean, the Georgia center might even go in the first. Wilson. Yeah. I mean, when you're forcing, this is probably one of the more drafts in recent memory where I can't figure it out. I mean, there's no rhyme or reason. Even guys in the top 10 like Membo, still in a regular draft, no one should ever be talking about that guy as a right tackle only, as the 4th best player in the draft. And if he is, he's a generational right tackle, which it's crazy. So
he would have gone in like the
he would have gone 10 to 15. A pure right tackle like that in a normal tackle year.
Yeah, last year
where you have 2, when you have that. So, what scares me is, okay, nailed the pick in the first round, and probably needs to be a playmaker, whether or not if it's a wide receiver or I don't know, but if they wait, they're going to be hating life.
Yeah, our offensive line, there's a lot of depth. We don't have the elite talent like that we had, 6, 7 years ago, whatever. But we're not sitting here like desperate. Even if Guyton comes out and plays like shit next year, and whether or not the team does this is up for debate. But they could easily shift Tyler to left tackle, put Asim Richards, put Bass, whatever, at left guard. Hoffman started a bunch of games last year. He was fine. It's not ideal. You would I think we would all like it to be better, or in that scenario at least where Guyton disappoints. If Guyton is fine, then we're generally we're good. Upgrade Steele a bit, ideally, right guard, whatever. But I agree with what you're saying about this offensive line class is really weak, which is probably going to mean that they go earlier. It's a little bit counterintuitive, but I think they're probably going to go a little bit earlier just because teams know it's weak, and it's like if you want one, you better take one now. And so why not use that to our advantage? We're okay, I could conjure up a scenario where we trade back and certain guys are gone and the board looks a certain way, or 21 or whatever, and we should take Tyler Booker or something. I think he'd be he's going to start for 10 years. no complaints. But generally speaking, that is not given all the possibilities, I don't think it's very likely. And we probably should look elsewhere, just given our needs, given the strengths, different positions. Like, you can get a guy like Zabel or Booker most years in the first round. Last year, you could have gotten Graham Barton in the 20s, an interior offensive lineman. He's similar to Zabel. While I do like them, and I do think they're going to be good long-term starters, maybe even make a Pro Bowl or two, we should go elsewhere.
Yeah, the offensive line it's kind of a little bit like wide receiver to me. If you don't go early, I don't know that I really want to bother a whole lot. You're just looking at more depth, young pieces, and kind of already have a bunch of young depth offensive lineman pieces. Except I don't view the O linemen as good as the wide receivers, and I don't think that the need at O line is nearly as big as what we're looking at in terms of wide receiver on the team.
Yeah, I mean, we're forgetting a little bit about what we have, at least on the O line. I mean, I could see where, maybe a guard, a reserve guard, maybe. I mean, you got Bass, you got Jones now, who, maybe he'll pan out. Steele, he's going to be gone soon, like within a couple years. So, then you're talking about one of the tackles. Richards is not going to be anything. Bass, you may be able to start for a year or two. You'd be okay. But they're going to look at it at some point. I just don't think this is the time to do it. They could get by, for a year. They could probably just roll out, start Jones at, start Bass at right tackle. Jones is your backup. And, swing tackle will be the only thing you're worried about. Fowler, he might be, a couple of years. You still don't, you got Simple Sam at end. You need an end eventually. Sanborn, I like that pick. You still need some more at linebacker because Overshone's not coming back until I don't care what he says. He's not Jesus, so he's not going to come back and win the Player of the Year and everything else.
And the real question is, when do you take the running back? Because it's an awesome running back class, and I could talk for days about the running backs.
Third round.
Yeah, I was gonna say you can't wait till the fifth. I mean, if you pick up a fourth somewhere or second, third, like I feel confident waiting until one of those picks. But you can't wait till the fifth, and that's the part that kills me most about this draft, not having a fourth. Even though I know fourth doesn't seem that valuable, I just think it's an awesome spot to pick a running back most years, and this year especially because of the depth. You're going to get guys that, in my opinion, are not that less talented than a second or third round running back in this draft. But without that, you can't risk waiting until the fifth. I mean, I could go on for days about running backs I'd take in the third.
No, it's going to be wiped out if we try to wait until the fifth. It's, absolute best case scenario. Hope and a prayer, someone like Damian Martinez, but he should really go in the fourth. Yeah, to me, if Henderson is there in the second, okay, I'll be happy. Judkins would be fine. Caleb Johnson would be good. Yeah, I wouldn't complain about any of those picks, but for me, I'd rather roll the dice on someone like Harvey in the third. If he's not there, Sampson, and even honestly, if there's a run on those guys right before we pick, I wouldn't even be upset with someone like Giddens. Maybe even Devin Neal in the third. But yeah, you cannot wait until the fifth. You'd be in the same position as last year. You know what's going to happen.
What about Tootin?
Yeah, I mean, if they took him in the third, that would be fine. He's probably towards the back end of who I would consider in the third. But if they took him in the third, I'd be fine with it.
Pretty much how I am. I just don't think you can bank on. I mean, like I'd feel good about an Ollie Gordon even in the draft, but can you trust that he makes it to the fifth? Same thing with like a Devin Neal, a Damian Martinez. I'm just afraid by the fifth round you're going to be looking at more like Kyle Monungai, Jaden Blue, Taj Brooks, and those are all great like second running backs in the draft. You draft one and maybe spin around and take a second one later, but they're just not guys that I want to bank my season on being my number one running back. We just don't have anything there to start right now.
No, you're starting Javonte. I mean, and honestly, like I don't need a starter per se because I'm not sure that R.J. Harvey or Dylan Sampson would start necessarily, but you need a running back that is more talented, more explosive than Javonte Williams and Miles Sanders. It doesn't necessarily mean this is a guy that's going to get 23 carries a game, but you need someone who is basically just more of a playmaker that you can mix in with Williams and Sanders and whatever else you're going to do there. And to me, someone like Taj Brooks, I love him in the fifth, but if that's all we do at running back, then that's the problem.
That
Because
that
while I
that would
think
be
he's
a
going to be
mistake.
good, yeah,
That would definitely be a mistake. You know, and the thing that is that you hate to whine about that fourth round pick, but I mean it's when it's hard to find 100 good players in this draft, and you're talking about you go from you know picking 76 to 150. I mean, in this draft, that's a huge chasm. You're talking guys in the 150s. They're none of them. You can just look at the names. None of these guys. If you want a starter, you're pretty much shit out of luck, unless you get lucky outside that top 100. It's that thin of a class. And except for certain positions, you can get a tight end, you can get you know D tackle for sure,
yep.
into the third. But back, that's where your Neal's he taps out in the hundreds. Tootin's in the hundreds. But 150. I mean, that's you might as well just give it up in this draft because I mean that's struggle. Like just looking at okay, could you pick up someone who could be a nickel corner in that range? Absolutely not. Once that fifth comes around, you're looking for gadgets and you're looking for I would just pick up. You got pass rushers that can be had there, backs that can be had there. But how many backs you going to take? Because you're going to take the two vets probably to camp. You'll have Vaughn running around as a token, and then you'll have the one extra. You're banking for the future back. That's about as many as you can carry in there. So you can't the double dipping it back, even though it makes the most value, you could get yourself a good solid number two running back in that area. Like a guy could be your backup for. Then you're just looking for, like I said, there's gadgets. Yeah, there's some little gadget players. Both sides of the football, or you're taking a stashed injured player like McLaughlin. Again, when we get down there, it's just really I don't like this draft at all.
Yeah, I think your best bet at finding a starter on day 3 is probably D line.
Yeah,
Maybe
D
tight end.
tackle for sure. You can still probably get a rotational. Hey, this is a guy that can come in and be like a Golston or something. He could be
Yeah,
a inside outside guy, or you can even get a couple of rushers. Um, but once you get into that pick 150 area, I mean, it's like I said, I'm just looking at the names. It's just like
yeah,
scary.
yeah. I would truly be shocked if they passed up running back in the first 3 rounds. They saw what happened last year. Obviously, they made a point to address it in free agency to an extent. They brought in a bunch of guys as part of the pre-draft stuff. I mean, they brought in Hampton, Judkins, Henderson for 30 visits, as well as I think Tootin,
Tootin was
maybe
one of them.
maybe Harvey as well. I'm not certain on him,
No,
but
he wasn't.
yeah,
But
to me like Judkins is not my ideal pick in the
uh,
second. I could come up with something better for sure with guys who I think will probably have a decent chance of being there. But if they take them, I'm not going to be upset. And if it means not dicking around until day 3, then please do it.
yeah, the guy that I mean they have had interest in him was Samson, but nobody's really
Mm-hmm.
talking about him.
Hey, I like
Um,
Samson. I thought he was. I mean, to me, he's better than Tootin. I mean, I think I would take Harvey over him, but it's close. Samson was the best running back in the SEC last year. I mean, he was disappointing in the playoff game at Ohio State. Like, okay, what do you think is going to happen here? They're playing Tennessee, goes up to Ohio State at night. Fucking 18 degrees or whatever else. Ohio State had just lost their last game that they played prior to that was Michigan. Embarrassed themselves. Like everybody knew they were going to win that game by 3 touchdowns. So he didn't have a great game there, but he was one of the best offensive players in the SEC all season. And he profiles, same way as someone like Harvey, not a guy who is going to be 22, 24 carries every week, but he's like that explosive element that you mix in. You're like ham and egger, 3.5 yards and a cloud of dust, Javonte Williams, whatever. Now you actually have a legitimately explosive running back, basically similar to what Pollard was, early on, and maybe they develop into a starter the way Pollard did. But yeah, I mean Samson in the third, perfectly comfortable with that.
So, we've covered to a pretty good extent what we're going to do early on in the draft, but really the meat of this draft, sadly, is beyond pick 150.
All right, so
2 in the 5th, 2 in the 6th, and 3 7. So, I mean, if they are going to build this roster, they're going to have to do it with some of those.
well, then you start thinking, okay, what are they looking at? What have they been looking at in that range? So then that's what they've been looking at. D tackle. They've been looking at the end. Obviously, the corner thing they're going to have to try, but it doesn't make a lot of sense. Guards will be done by then. Maybe a tight end if they really have that fetish. Then you're talking. That's where your corner. They got a couple from. Let's see, also safety too. That Mickens
I think
kid.
safety's pretty. You could get a good one maybe like in the 5th or
Yeah,
so.
I mean Mickens was a guy from Clemson we're looking at. In that area, you're going to see maybe a linebacker. Inside linebacker at that stage, you're going to be looking at a Shamar James type, Taheem Powell, that kind of guy. Outside of that, you got special teamer types like Madrano. I'm sitting here right now, just scrolling through my list, and I'm in the 200s, and it's really gross.
I still think D tackle. I mean, we've already D tackle deep. CJ West, Mills, this guy Caldwell from Oregon, I think, is a little bit underrated. Even the end, they're not, of course, your explosive edge rushers, but someone like Hassanin, I think would be a really good 5th rounder. Jared Ivey, I'm not sure if I'll make it to the 5th, but Ivey is a little bit like Golston, jumbo end, maybe kick inside for pass rushing situations. So yeah, I think unlikely to get a starter, but starters are going to come out at day 3. You just don't know where. It's just a matter of where do you think what's most likely. And I do think D line, safety. I like some of those guys like Ransom, Malachi Moore, Trader from Maryland. But yeah, it's at that point it's a crapshoot for the most part. But I do think linebacker is a decent chance. Shamar James, I like Simon, Kobe King, Penn State. I think they brought him in. I don't know if it was a visit or a combine, something like that. So
Yeah, another guy that I kind of like was for linebacker, Teddy Buchanan from Cal. But he seems like he'll probably go. He's going to be gone before our 5th rolls around. He'll go earlier, a little bit earlier than that. I'm just, seriously, I'm kind of just looking at, okay, what guy could fall? Maybe one of the ends to the 5th, like David Walker, one of the LSU ends, maybe. Then you're talking like Winston from Penn State, the safety. I don't think they'll go cornerback. So that would be the 5th round would be a sweet spot to get a developmental quarterback.
maybe Denzel. You said corner or quarterback?
Quarter.
Yeah,
I mean, you can get a Will Howard or something in there.
Yeah, I like Burke. I like Zy Alexander, Bryant from Kansas. Some of those guys, are they going to start day 1 if Diggs misses, the first month? Obviously, probably not. And even if they do, they probably won't be great. But it's just the position that we're in. They decided to trade for Elam. You got to hope that their evaluation was right. I think Elam got a little bit of a raw deal in Buffalo. He played the entire AFC Championship game. He wasn't terrible. Played against Kansas City. Okay, gave up like maybe 3 or 4 catches for like 35 yards. It wasn't anything truly egregious. I saw much worse out of our corners last year with all the injuries. Like whoever the heck, I don't even know who it was. I scrubbed it from my mind, but the corner they got picked on in the second Eagles game. Of course, the season was basically over anyway. Like literally gave up 150 yards or something in the first half, and got benched. It's one of these guys that was playing earlier in the year. So, yeah, I mean, you just got to hope you can weather the storm, kind of mask it. I mean, Eberflus's scheme, it's a lot of zone. It's a lot of, like, letting things happen in front of you and crashing down, making the tackle. So you don't need the elite, man cover talents to kind of play that scheme for a couple games. So you just got to hope that they can weather the storm.
To me, if you're going to take cornerback to be that guy, that pick, I don't think we're in the position to think we're that way. We're not desperate where we have to have that guy. We think Diggs is going to come back. Of course, we got Bland, who we think is
and you kind of have to be
know,
encouraged with
yeah,
their recent draft history later rounds too.
yeah.
They've done
I'm not.
decent scouting the
Yeah,
corner.
I mean, there's only a few positions on the team that I think that if we ignore, that we're going to be hating life. And honestly, you know, corner early, no, but they got to do it. They got to address it some way. They're going to have to address. Uh, to me, they have to come out with a corner that can at least be a nickel. Um, that's tough order. You're looking at first 3 rounds. Otherwise, you're banking on you know mining something out of your ass. So to me, I hate to say corners a worry. Corner is a worry, but you know offensively, they spend a lot of time and limit whatever limited resources they spend in free agency. They have to. They did it on defense. They got to do something with the offense. They got to get it wide receiver two, another back, maybe another lineman or two. But they have to get I don't know something on offense, something explosive. If you can't get the running back, then you get a receiver, and you got to do it early.
Yeah, I mean that's to me, the offense needs playmakers. You need someone that's explosive. It could be a running back, could be a receiver. A month or two ago, when there was a possibility that Genty could drop, it's like okay, that could be the explosive element. Maybe you could overlook receiver a little bit. That's obviously not going to happen now. So ultimately, it's going to have to come from receiver unless it falls just right. You get Henderson in the second. I mean, do you really feel if we ignore offense until the third and then we take someone like
No,
Harvey, who I really like,
no,
you'll feel maybe okay, but
no.
like not great. So yeah, I agree. I mean, I think they are locked in on receiver, and then the only reason I think Will Johnson is just because I do think he's a great fit in a kind of like you're saying off, more conservative like read vision type defense.
Yeah, but he can't
Uh,
tackle. He's a terrible
yeah.
tackler.
He's a terrible tackler, but he's great at reading through receivers to the quarterback and breaking on the ball and being
That's
a playmaker. So
Eberflus's corner's got to be able to tackle, man. I mean, that's just part of their game. But
yeah, I don't I he's there's almost no scenario where I would take him at 12. Honestly, both of the receivers would have to be gone. We couldn't trade down. It would have to be a pretty crazy thing. I would not take him at 12. I just playing devil's advocate because I do think he'll be in consideration, but I do think they are very locked in on receiver and the fact that I mean obviously. Uh, they haven't addressed it at all. Steven came out and said, and literally basically said they want speed at receiver. There's been like little rumblings in the draft media. The Cowboys are really interested in receivers going back to like the combine basically, and so um, I do think they're pretty locked in on one of those two guys. So like right now, if you look at the betting odds, not to say this necessarily means a whole lot, but you can bet on which position a team will take with their first pick, and for the Cowboys, receiver is almost even money, which is relatively rare. Like a lot of the teams, like the position with the best odds might be like basically they're saying like 33%, 25%, maybe 40%. But right now it's almost even for receiver, and then it's like corner, D line, O line, and they're all around like maybe like 15, 20%, something like that. So um, for whatever that's worth.
yeah, I mean, I don't know. This every draft's pivotal, but this one I think is pretty important with the way that they're gonna have to. I don't know, prioritize where they don't always do that. It's rare that I've seen in all these drafts in the past, especially in the clay drafts. There doesn't seem to be a focus. Sometimes there'll be a little bit, but they've set themselves up almost to where, okay, you could leave the defense as it is in the first 2 rounds and go strictly offense. And that's a rarity for them to do that. They almost have to come out of, got to get a receiver. You can get a back later on, but you got to get a receiver. They simply can't, you know, if they want to, they're going to grind the ball and do this, they got to have more of a threat than Tolbert. Hate to say it.
Yeah, the big thing that I've been going back and forth about with Golden and McMillan is that if you look at our other receivers, and especially if you assume that they have hopes for Mingo or whatever they obviously traded for him, these are, if you're looking at Tolbert, you're looking at Mingo, you're looking at Brooks and these guys, they're all like bigger, not that fast. They're more like possession types,
Hmm?
not that shifty. They don't have like great, explosive change of direction and like cutting off their routes and like exploding, off of their stem, like downfield. So it makes me think that Golden might be the preferred choice, just because while McMillan might be the slightly better prospect, Golden might be the guy who brings something that they don't really have. And the fact that they signed Paris Campbell, who I think plays a little, in theory, plays a little bit like Golden, but he's a throwaway pick. But the fact that they picked him makes me think maybe in some weird way it's like if they don't get a receiver with speed, that in their minds they think Campbell can do a little bit of that, because he did test, he ran a 4.3 or whatever the hell it was. I mean, he's not really a real receiver, but yeah, I mean, I think he is 50-50 to get cut in training camp, like in my opinion. But
He will not make the opening day roster. I'm sorry to say that.
yeah, so I'm just saying, like, the fact that they signed one receiver and it's a guy like that who is stylistically, quicker, shiftier, speed, whatever, ran the 4.3, makes me think they're looking for someone like that, and that's something that they didn't have on the roster. That's why I think they might lean Golden.
Well,
Yeah, obviously, complete
you can
guess.
do Golden. You could do. See, the more I think about McMillan, the more I think it's an odd fit. Just in terms of, oh, do you want to be more speedy? You want to be more explosive? He's not really that guy. And he's like a Mike Evans. Okay, if he's like a Mike Evans, I mean, Mike Evans doesn't scream explosive. He's just a rock. So you're going to make that guy the rock? No, you're paying Lamb, so Lamb's going to be your wild card. So they want something that's going to be different. So either you go with the guy like the kid from Ohio State who is a very good route runner, very precise, very sound, or you go and get a speed guy. So the speed guy, that's where you have Golden. Golden can do a little bit of both. Then you're starting to think, okay, you're gonna have to wait till later on and get a straight line speed guy. But they have to do something there. I don't know what it is, but yeah, I don't think getting a big body, a 6'3", 200-pounder out there, is gonna be the thing they want. They're gonna want something that's gonna have to, you know, do different things. So, that's where Golden fits in.
No, I agree. I mean, I that's where I go back and forth, because I do think McMillan is a slightly better prospect, but I think Golden is obviously not far
Fit.
off in my opinion, but
It's
a
about
better
fit.
fit. Yeah,
Yeah.
and what really drew me to him, I like quite almost like literally posted this verbatim prior to the combine, where I was like, I've been watching Golden a lot, and I really noticed him later in the season when he blew up. Watching the SEC championship game, watching the playoff, and it was just like, I knew about Bond, and I didn't know anything about Golden. I didn't even know his name, and I was just like, this receiver is the only one making plays in the passing game. He's like constantly coming down with these contested catches downfield. It's like 2nd and 12. They're just throwing the damn ball up, and he's
Well, the
coming down
scary
with
thing is
it.
he came out of nowhere. I mean, he was
Yeah,
not
yeah.
considered part of Texas. That was not, he's not the cornerstone of Texas offense. He came out of nowhere, filled a hole.
As a
Now you just
transfer
kind of,
though, so it's
yeah.
there is
You
like
can't figure. That's the bad thing about all these. it's going to get worse in future
Yeah.
years. You can't figure out what these kids are doing because they were
Yep.
jumping from one school to the next every year.
Yep. Yep. No, but I mean, what I saw out of him when I was just watching those games, and then when I started looking at him a little bit closer after the season, like he's arguably the best route runner in the class, in my opinion. Like the way he runs routes, his releases, the way he kind of sets up DBs with like little
Yep.
shoulder shrugs and things like that. Like he's pretty refined as a route runner. And I didn't think he was going to run as fast as he did. I was just like, okay, let's see if he runs a 4 4, maybe high 4 3s, that would really solidify it. Running a 4 2 9, I don't think he plays necessarily to that speed, but you very rarely, like, think about Xavier Worthy last year, guys like this who have this like crazy speed. Oftentimes they don't run routes really well. They're not that tough. They don't come down with contested catches. They aren't making like these acrobatic, tracking the ball 30, 40 yards downfield. He does a lot of those things that you don't expect out of a receiver with that speed. And that's what really makes him appealing to me, because normally you get these guys that are small and fast and they just want to run go routes. They're not really physical. Their routes are, they run 2 or 3 routes and that's all they can really do. But this guy, like, he's way more refined. And to have that time speed, it's again, doesn't play to it exactly, but you do have to respect it. And it may also have been, something with the scheme and the way that Texas was really run heavy. If you put an elite receiver, top 5 receiver in the league, on the opposite side of him, drawing that coverage, that speed might show up a little bit more. So
Yeah, I mean the thing that is kind of concerning about him is that again it was very flash in the pan. I mean, but you're not going to have a lot of that consistency going forward. You're going to have to scout players. It's going to be harder, but he's one of those guys that just came out of kind of like nowhere, and you just got to worry about whether or not if you're going to spend a first round pick and he's going to be your wide receiver 2, he's going to be that. He at least has good character. That's a good thing for him. But I don't know. To me, I like the player. I don't like him at 12.
yeah,
And
I mean, but who do you really like at 12? That's the problem,
nobody,
though.
nobody. I mean, that's the thing. I mean, McMillan, he's okay, but I mean, it's just hard. Uh, you know, there's not a lot of difference between him and the kid from Ohio State. Honestly, if you
Yeah, no,
get
there
down,
isn't.
it's just what you prefer. Do you want chocolate or vanilla? Do you want a route runner or do you want guy? I mean, Golden, without question, is far more explosive. He's about the only guy you're going to get in that range that's going to be explosive enough. It's just whether or not it just worries me when like I said, dude basically is buried. Great, granted, great, heavy team and everything, but he explodes for what, 3 games, 2 games, and that's it.
It wasn't. I mean, it was the SEC championship game. It
Yes.
was massive games. The SEC championship, the game against Arizona State.
Yeah.
He played really well in
Well,
the last.
Arizona State's secondary. Let's be honest, man. Come on.
Well, yeah, it's not great, but he played
Yeah.
really well against Texas A&M in the last game of the regular season, which was basically almost a playoff game because whoever won that game went into or made the SEC championship, and he played really well on the road there. And then even though his stat line isn't gaudy against Ohio State, he made like a ridiculous one-handed catch, and it wasn't the only one throughout the season. He made another one. I think it was against Vanderbilt. Made a ridiculous one-handed catch on the sideline, and it's like that's what I'm saying. You don't see these like 4 3, 4 2 8 receivers making catches like that, running routes like that. And I agree. You worry. It's like, okay, he only had half a season of production or whatever it is. Of course, part of that is probably the fact that he transferred and he was at University of Texas for probably about 8 months. But you just do not see the type of things that he did with that speed, and that's why I'm like you touched on his character. I think that's if it wasn't for that, you'd be a little bit more worried. But like everything I've read and everything you hear people say, it's like one of the hardest workers, leader, et cetera, et cetera. So you put all that together, and it's like it could go sideways, but you have a really good chance here that this guy is going to be Jordan Addison someone like that, which is not a true number one necessarily, but you put him next to Justin Jefferson or CeeDee Lamb, and you're going to be tearing through a lot of defenses.
And the way the Cowboys have kind of operated lately is kind of have a receiver in the hole when they draft another, and the next guy just kind of moves up. I guess Golden compared with Lamb for a bit before he takes over in a couple of years.
Yeah, I
You're
mean
saying he's not
Lamb's.
really that guy.
Yeah, who knows exactly what he'll end up being. I don't think he's going to be an elite number one type receiver, but ultimately you have Lamb under contract for 4 years. First round pick is 4 years plus a team option. Like, you let that stuff work itself out on the back end. I think if you take Golden, even if you take McMillan, even if you take Igbokwe, I prefer Golden to Igbokwe for sure. McMillan, bit of a toss up like we talked about. But I think one way or the other, you take one of those guys, you pair him with Lamb, you're going to have an elite pairing for the next, uh, as long as you have Lamb under contract, the next 4 years. And I think it challenges, to me especially, Golden, just because of the fit. But I think this is probably the case with McMillan as well. Take one of those two. Our wide receiver duo is up there. Maybe not in year one with a rookie, but by year two, I think it's up there with Jefferson and Addison, AJ Brown and Smith, Higgins and Chase. That's the hope at least.
Well, and receiver in one, and then like you mentioned earlier, running back in either the second or third. It kind of feels like forcing for need, but it sure would be nice to get some talent at
Well,
receiver and running back.
there's times when need is a need, and when you lack an explosive element on offense. I mean, seriously, if we ran out there tomorrow with a new running back and the same wide receiver crew, what do you think is going to happen?
Same old same.
I think the second, will be a little bit. We talk about running back and all these things. I do think it's likely when they're on the board or when they're on the clock that I will probably prefer going elsewhere at aside from running back in a second. Assuming, let's just say we
Oh,
take Golden or McMillan or
absolutely.
whatever. Yeah.
No, no,
So.
no. I mean, unless Henderson's staring us in the face, I mean,
Mhm.
that would be the only route I would go. The rest of the backs, you can wait and you can find another one just the same as the rest of them. I mean, there are there are kids in this draft that you can probably plug in and they could surprise. So, there's a couple of them. What was the one that the kid in the East West Shrine game, the Arizona kid? He was good. He's got some juice. There's another kid. They have plenty of options. I mean, they just need to, you know, yes, find the right fit, but do it where it doesn't impact the rest of what you need to accomplish. And that means getting more explosive. You can add another back on this offense, and it's not going to make a difference
Yeah, I
unless
mean,
it's
if
a
you
Gene T. Yes, but no. Other than that, Hampton, I don't think so. I mean, come on,
yeah, if
no.
you take Golden in the, I mean, if Hampton is there in the second, I'm taking him for sure. I think you're saying
Well,
in the first.
he's
I
going to
agree.
go. He's
Of
gone.
course, he's not going to be there in the second. If you take Golden in the first, or even McMillan, I think McMillan could provide some more explosiveness. It's not in the exact same way. It would look different, more like downfield jump balls, whatever. But if you get one of the top two receivers, I do think you can go elsewhere aside from running back in the second. I like Johnson, fine. I like Judkins. If they took either one of them, I'd be fine with it. But I do think you could go elsewhere, take one of these running backs in the third, and be fine. Like
So
we need the
yeah,
explosiveness, but we don't need to prioritize it above everything else,
I agree.
especially if you get it in the first round.
But what do you establish as in the second round? Okay, you got it. What do you get? The corners are terrible. I would not spend. I mean, the corner class is horrific. Unless you get a guy late that's some kind of dog that you don't know about. I mean, the top talent in this class, I don't like. So if you're talking a second round, then you're going to start looking at, okay, do we look at defensive end? Do we look at linebacker? Obviously, corner is always going to be a thing, but I swear that there is not a corner in this class I would take if I needed one outside the first round, and that includes Johnson.
Even you're saying you would not take Johnson outside of the first round?
No, he won't get outside the first
Oh
round.
yeah,
He's the
yeah.
only one. Yeah, but look at the rest of the class. Is there anyone that you would feel, oh yeah, that'd be a great pick in the second round? No, it'd be
I
okay.
I think
Eh.
I think Ravel was a little bit, with the
Well,
injury,
he's
maybe
hurt.
special. Yeah,
He's the,
but
he's probably going to be the guy that we'll pick up. Probably. I mean, if
I think
he's
he could be
there,
really good.
he'll be okay. You know, but I mean, you got to think outside of him. What if some other team takes him in the first round? They want that. They got the guy. Now you're staring at a bunch of bad corners. I mean,
Yeah, I
let's
wouldn't
be
force it.
honest.
Look, if it's look, you and I have talked about this for years. You know, I'm not pushing or I'm not forcing a corner just because I think we need one. Like if it's me, honestly, the positions I'm looking at most in the second round: O line, D line, someone who drops. Tyler Booker, Donovan Jackson, Tyleek Williams, even uh,
Jackson,
Walter Nolan, Donovan Jackson from Ohio State.
Jackson. Oh.
No, or you
I'm
saying
doing
you
the
would
Homer.
like it?
No, I'm doing the Homer Simpson. Oh.
Oh yeah,
He's
yeah.
just he's so solid. He's hurt, but
Yeah, so
yeah,
that's what I'm looking at one of those guys potentially dropping. If they're all off the board, then I'm looking at running back a little bit closer. Like to me, Alfred Collins is not a grand slam type pick in the second, but I think he would be a really good pick because he's going to be a really solid one technique. I think he has a little bit of untapped pass rush talent. You don't have to start him
we
right
do
away.
not need a progress stopper from Mozzie. Okay.
Look,
No,
you got to look at
Collins in the third, he'd be awesome.
yeah.
Awesome nose tackle, just rock. Stick him in the third. I wouldn't take him in the second. No
He's
way.
a backup for me in the second, really. I mean, he's not ideally one of these guys who is like a late first like five or so picks of the second drops. Someone like Jackson, someone like Booker, someone like Tyleek Williams, even Nolan. I mean, I don't love Nolan. I don't think he does much of anything against the run aside from shooting gaps and maybe he runs right into the running back. But if he's there in the second, even if he gets within a couple picks of us in the second, I'd be more than happy to give up, one of our fifths to move up 3 or 4 picks for him because he is explosive as a pass rusher, and you are looking again with Eberflus's scheme. You need the front four to be able to dominate, and I think with him, someone like him, Osa, obviously Parsons, you mix in Fowler and Nealon, Williams, whatever, like that group could do it. If Nolan can live up, as long as he isn't a complete, chuckle fuck off the field, basically, you put him next to Osa and Parsons, and yeah, he's going to do some damage. So I'm looking, hopefully, someone like that drops. But if all of those guys are gone, all those like no brainer, they should have been good, taking 10, 15 picks earlier. If they're all gone, that's when I'm kind of looking at someone like Collins and then the running backs. Maybe even the linebacker, Schwessinger, just as like a BPA. I don't think we need a linebacker really, but just as like a best player available type thing.
What about Walker at 12?
Jalen Walker?
If he was there, what would you do?
I don't think I would take him. I mean, I think he fits. If Zimmer was our D coordinator, I would love him. I think he fits best in one of these hybrid type roles, like Andrew Van Ginkel with the Vikings, Zach Bond with the Eagles, where he's playing some off ball traditional linebacker. He's blitzing some, they're moving him around. And I think Zimmer, the way that the defense that he ran with the double A gap blitzes and moving guys around and faking the blitzes and bringing guys from different angles, I think he would have been a perfect fit, and he would have probably been one of my top choices at 12. But with Eberflus,
No.
you are running these. It's like, okay, these are our four
Yeah.
rushmen,
Yep.
like
Yeah.
like
We're gonna
Marinelli
be
would
very.
call them.
We're gonna be about as basic
Yeah,
as we recall. I mean, Eberflus is not a whiz bang. He's nothing like Quinn. Even Zimmer is more creative than he is. So
yeah.
if you're gonna get, he's gonna be looking for a strong, long armed left end. Kind of like they're gonna have to replace Golston. So
Yeah,
that's what
Williams,
he's.
Stewart.
Yeah,
That's what
that's
they're
what
looking
he.
at. The
Yeah,
prototype
yeah,
DN side. Yeah, that's
yeah.
yeah.
That's what you're gonna see. But I see these things. Oh yeah, they're gonna pair this guy with Parsons and come on, this
I
is
also don't love the
dumbest.
fit with that. It's okay, the scheme is what it is, and it's going to be a little bit more basic. I think it'll still be a sound scheme. We'll be fine defensively, but when you have one undersized edge rusher who you're
Yeah.
going to pay 40 plus million a year to, who
Yeah.
you really should be using more as like a designated pass rusher, like saving him in clear like running situations or neutral, second and 5 type situations. When you already have someone like that, and then they sign Fowler, who's a very similar player. I mean, I know it's only for a year. To me, drafting someone like Walker, like I don't think he's so much of a no-brainer. Like obviously, Abdul Carter is similar. You don't want him getting beaten up in the run game. You want to use him in clear passing situations, all this. But his talent is so undeniable. Like you just take him and deal with it, and you figure it out. Walker, I think it's close enough to where like if you don't have a nice scheme fit, you have to pass him up because he's not like such a no-brainer.
Mm.
You have to take this guy. He's amazing. Like when I watched him, his edge rush, like pure edge rush, to me, Mike Green is better as a pure edge rusher. Walker has the off
Green's
ball,
insane. Green is
yeah,
insane, but you just got to worry about his head.
yeah, whatever all that stuff is, yeah.
Yeah, that's the sad thing. Honestly, I would take a guy like Green
Mm-hmm.
at 12 if his head was straight, but we know it's not. So,
Yeah, I don't think they're going to really consider him.
no, that they're I don't they're going to pay one pass. They look at things in economics.
Mhm.
You got your one pass rusher, okay. You got your one wide receiver. That's why they're going to probably try to go. I don't know. That's the thing. A first round contract, whether or not it's a few years down the road or not, still means something to these cheap motherfuckers.
Yeah.
So that also will kind of factor into it. Offensive line, you can kind of did they did that for part of that's economics. You can outside of an offensive tackle, you get a guard. Yeah, they'll do like Martin did near the end, but they're gonna have to look at I don't know just how that one pick is gonna fit for the next 4 years because they know
Yep.
they're gonna devote all this. They're gonna be they're gonna be they're gonna have sticker shock because of Parsons, everything else. So they're gonna lose their minds. So they need to get to a point where this player that they're gonna pick at that spot not only helps the team but also you know makes it easier on their ridiculous, cheap cap mines.
Yep. Yeah, I think to me, early in the offseason, I said like with the draft, the way we operate in free agency, obviously they don't really add difference makers. We know that because they're cheap. It is what it is. So the draft is where you look for the difference makers. Unfortunately, they surprised me a little bit with some of what they did in free agency this year with some of the trades. I think some of that might work out
I'm actually
this
pretty
year,
happy
but
with some of them. Some
yeah,
of them
yeah,
pretty good.
Fowler I think could be. You know what you're going to get out of
Fowler
him.
Fowler was a good save, for losing Golston.
Mm-hmm.
Sanborn,
I like Sanborn. I think he's hurt.
he'll be a decent linebacker.
Yeah,
He can start any of the three positions. You lose nothing. You got him
sure.
for dirt. So you
Yep.
get a starter, you get a quality backup, no problem. Um, some of the other guys, I mean, they're middling talent, but at least they added bodies now. They didn't wait until, you know, after the draft and then start signing a bunch of fat guys or
Yep.
trading for fat guys.
Yep.
So,
Yeah, I mean, I
and,
think even Kenneth Murray, he's going to make
nah,
mistakes and he's going to be out of position, but he's also going to make a lot of plays too, explosive plays, the way that he comes downhill. And I think, I think what you bank on with him, he has the physical talent. He does make plays. He tackles for loss, explosive plays, playing downhill. The hope is that Eberflus, former linebacker coach, obviously we have a linebacker coach who's been with Eberflus for the last almost 10 years. Between the two of them, you would hope they could get him playing a little bit more disciplined, reading the right thing. If they can do that, you could really
yeah,
have something. Even if you
yeah,
don't, I think you still have a guy who can kind of be like a poor man's Overshown a little bit. Like he's going to make some mistakes, but he's also just going to make some eye popping plays here and there just because he's so explosive downfield. So
yeah. I'm not expecting a
I think
lot
that
from
helps.
Murray. I mean, Murray will be, he makes a lot of bad decisions,
Yeah.
like in football intellect decisions. Sanborn's the opposite. He's a
Yeah,
smart player, no question.
yeah,
He's
physically limited. Yeah,
yeah. But
if you could
I,
combine them, you'd have a
yeah,
All-Pro player, Hall of
but
Fame player, even.
that brings you back to the decision whether or not, oh my God, do we have to get a linebacker? Overshone is not going to play until at least half the season's over. I don't care what he says. So you're dealing with that. You got Louis Fowl. I mean, there's some things where you know they can get some. The linebacker group in the draft is not good,
Yeah,
but
it's not.
there's I wouldn't either do it early or get out. Defensive
Yeah.
tackle, you can wait. Uh, that Jordan Phillips kid
Hmm.
from Maryland, I
Yeah.
like. I've been watching him a little more recently. Wow, good, strong player, and young, 20. So that'd be the guy I would take later on. If you're looking at defensive tackle, I'm not doing early, but he'd be a guy I like.
Mhm. I think I don't know if it was the combine or somewhere they met with him. There was something like that.
Yeah, they met with
So
him. Yeah,
yeah,
I mean,
he's another guy that I just worry about. Like, is he going to make it to round 5? And then you're talking about round 3. Round 3 is a little bit too rich. Round 4 would be ideal. We don't
so
have a
what you're
fourth
saying is
round.
you're lamenting no fourth round.
Yeah, yeah. It's a tough one. It's for sure. And now we're gonna, we traded it for a guy at a position that we're now going to spend probably our first round pick on. So it's good.
Yeah,
Yeah, I don't.
The,
I
the,
agree. I mean, linebacker. I don't. I think we can get by
yeah.
for half a season with Murray and Sanborn and Leo Fowl. Overshow will come back. If he's 100%, who knows? We'll see. But you're only playing 2 linebackers at a time, usually.
Yeah.
Sometimes 3. I would take, like I mentioned, the guy Schwessinger from UCLA. If he's there in the second, and then like a bunch, the board is kind of bare. I'd consider it. But aside from that, as like, if he's the obvious best player available, okay, fine. But aside from that, I'm not looking at linebacker too hard. Maybe on day 3.
This is going to be an interesting draft. Just for we could be greedy and take the things we need, but there's so much areas that if you draft well in this draft, like later, you can get
Mm-hmm.
some good guys at defensive tackle. You can get yourself a back. Um, you know, they just have to be smart about where they're picking the guys and what they're doing because, like I said, there's some areas in this draft I wouldn't even take one in the first round, let alone at all. It's a weird draft.
Yeah, I think the hope is that they can identify those. I mean, I think they obviously know running back is deeper. I don't know if it was Jerry or someone else said it like just about a couple weeks ago. It might even been multiple guys, coaches, Jerry, Steven, whoever, and they all basically said running back and I think D line. I don't think they specified D tackle, but I think they said D line were the deepest. So I wouldn't hold off because of that necessarily, but I hope I'll say this. I just hope they are willing to take 2 at either position, just because of as like a BPA type play. Because you could take a defensive tackle in the second or third, and like someone like Phillips, if he's sitting there in the fifth, might be too good to pass up. But if they say, oh well, we already got a D tackle, we're going to take some special teamer. That's when the problem starts. So.
we can't be that in love with Mozzie.
Yeah, I mean, I look at Mozzie. I basically look at him as like Hankins. Like when Hankins was with us for the later in his career, for under Quinn, I think 2022, 2023, a guy who can play 30% of the snaps, pure run stuffer, not great, but he's developing into a guy who could be a role player, decent role player, and I think he can play some snaps. But if you're banking on him, and I don't think they are. I don't think they're banking on him to play, 60, 70% of the snaps. I think right now, as we sit, if we're 3rd and 8, week 1, no big injuries, I think you're looking at front 4 of Parsons, Odigizua, Solomon Thomas, and probably Fowler. Obviously, you're going to rotate in Williams and Nealon and all these guys, but I think that will be the front 4. I think Thomas will play in clear passing situations, back up 3 technique. And yeah, I just hope they are willing to double up on some of these deeper positions, running back and D tackle specifically. So I'm not counting, or I'm not counting on it. I'm not overly optimistic, but I do think they will address both positions relatively high. Will they be willing to address them twice, just because it's like the guys they can't pass up? I'm skeptical.
They don't double dip.
Yeah,
That's not their. That's not their
they have their
style.
roles.
Well, they
Yeah.
don't, but like you said, there's reason for optimism. Hiring fresh young coaches in free agency, filling some roster spots. Maybe there's a little hope for optimism.
I
I
have
mean,
to
if you,
say I'm
I'm,
optimistic. I'm.
I think we could
Eh,
win. I think last year we were, you look at the over unders of teams and like what is expected and all this stuff. I think obviously we had all these injuries. Last year was very dysfunctional with the whole McCarthy thing. But the way they played the second half of the year, if they had Prescott, if they had Prescott and the defense played the way they did, I think they would have snuck into the playoffs. Honestly,
yeah. Yeah.
like it would have been very close. And I expect no major injuries, whatever. If you obviously can't account for that. I'm expecting somewhere between 9 and 11 wins. Even with our holes, the league is relatively weak. There's a lot of bad teams. It doesn't take much to get into the playoffs. Uh, to me, 9, 10 wins is not that hard to get to. And is that optimistic? Is that pessimistic? I really don't know. I don't think they'll win a Super Bowl, but I think they have a better than 50-50 chance to make the playoffs. So
Yeah. That's where kind of where I'm at. They'll be that middling. You know, maybe playoffs, maybe not playoffs. You know, competing within the division is going to be difficult. Um, they're going to have to hope for a second wild card more than likely because although Washington, maybe they're a flash in the pan. Philly, they could sleepwalk. They're doing enough things that are smart enough, and they'll get smarter in the draft. So we'll see.
the one thing that could uh, set Philly back, they are pretty dependent, obviously, on Barkley and their offense last year, and it may get better without more. But last year, there were a lot of games last year where they were, you know, tied late, we're up three against a so-so team, and it's 20-17 or something. It's not like their offense has been killing it. Barkley would pop some 60, 70-yard touchdown run and put it out of reach. He, to me, this season had a very similar season to McCaffrey last season. He was the same age this season as McCaffrey was last season. McCaffrey was an MVP caliber player, 2023. One of the best seasons in recent memory for a running back. Then what happens? Comes back this season, has some injuries, he's up and down. I could easily see Barkley, who had nearly, if you include the playoffs and the Super Bowl, he nearly had 500 touches last season. And he's a guy who's had injuries throughout his career. If he misses 5, 6 games, gets a high ankle sprain, or he's not quite as effective as I think he's at least 27, if not 28. And like historically, obviously that's when running backs start to kind of drop off. Henry has been an outlier, but I don't think you can count on that with guys who have had injury histories. If that happens, anything is in play. Just because I don't think the Eagles. Hurts is limited, obviously. He can make some plays here and there, but if they don't have Barkley popping off 50, 60-yard touchdowns, once a game, and they lost two of their top three pass rushers in free agency, you never know. The O line's still great. They still have really good receiver duo, one of the best in the
They
league.
did let Kenny Gainwell get away.
Oh,
Hey, if they
That
also
was a
if they
that was
we don't
an unheralded loss there.
we don't know what the situation is with the tush push either. That might get banned
Nah,
sometime this
nah,
offseason.
they're not gonna. If they tabled it to the summer meetings, they're not gonna ban it.
A lot of
They're gonna
times they
think they'll
say
think about it for another year.
if they push it to
Next
next
year
season, but a
maybe.
lot of when they start saying, people posted this stuff on the board about like once the league starts making noises about medical concerns and all this, it's basically their like coded language for we're going to get rid of this, and this is the reason.
We don't
If
want to
that
get sued.
happens, if that happens, and they get rid of that, and then Barkley misses 3-4 games, anything could happen in the division because I mean they're great at running the play. They run it better than any other team in the league. Obviously, Hurts is part of that. But if they take that away, they'll still be effective with pure quarterback sneaks. But if they can't, do this BS where they got guys behind them lifting them up and doing all this stuff, that will cost them a game at some point this season. And if Barkley misses a couple games or he's not quite as good because he's getting up there and he had a million touches last season, anything could happen in the division. I mean, they're the favorite, obviously, but I mean, just the season before we won the division. Like, I mean, I know we've lost some players; things are different. Okay, they have Barkley now, but again, he's getting up there. He has injury history. But yeah, I mean, I think Washington will be competitive. I think they're going to be over. They are overrated based on
They're
last season. They'll
they're
be
they're
competitive.
doing some stupid shit this year,
Oh yeah,
this offseason. It's not like they did some smart stuff last year, very
yeah.
smart. And I see the things they're doing now, and it doesn't seem quite as smart.
I thought they were. So I knew they were going to be aggressive, and of course, they had cap space. You have a rookie quarterback. You have cap space. I knew they were going to be aggressive, so I was expecting them to make some big moves. And when it was just trade for Debo,
Yeah,
trade for Tunsil, I was like, they're
The
fine,
Debo
but
thing, yeah, they missed that boat by a couple of years.
yeah,
2 years ago, I'd be like, oh my god, I'm scared to death. Not anymore.
yeah. I was thinking like they're going to sign someone like Higgins, or they're going to do something like that, which would have, it wouldn't have. I don't think it would have, elevated them to Super Bowl favor or anything like that. But it would have been a lot better than trading for a guy who's basically a gadget player. And then Tunsil, he's obviously he's good. He's better than what they had. But the fact that a playoff team like Houston, who has been in the playoffs the last 2 years,
It says, fuck it.
offense,
I
offensive
want,
line is their
yeah.
biggest concern, and to
And they're like,
trade their best
bye.
offensive lineman, it's something's off with that.
Yeah, I would not have. I would not have traded for that guy. And
And he's getting
yeah,
older, so
yeah.
maybe
I
he
mean,
doesn't. They take care of
so you got.
himself. They see that. I don't know.
I mean, even the other signings they had. Okay, they had
Oh, Kinlaw. What?
two good tackles. They let one go. You bring Kinlaw, and your answer
Worse.
at right end is the guy from New England, some Dietrich Wise or some shit.
It was that
But
one. Good God, yeah.
yeah, I mean, they literally Eddie Goldman, the guy that in Atlanta that quit. He's the backup to Kinlaw. I don't understand how that just I don't know what they're trying to do there. And
Well,
then
their
they hired
defense was so bad last year, and you
yeah,
didn't always
and
see
then
it because they were up big against bad teams. But when they
yeah,
played close games, like their defense couldn't stop anybody. I mean, we know how Quinn's defenses are. When the game's close, if you're playing better teams, his defenses are boom or bust. Sometimes they make big plays. They got lucky against Detroit. Goff basically, I don't. Yeah, I want to curse right now. I don't want to curse too much, but basically shit all over himself.
yeah,
And they're making big plays, but then you go and you play the Eagles the next week. Very first drive, 60-yard touchdown by Barkley, up and down the field all game, and that's how it was against really even Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay Mayfield fumbled that game away. Tampa Bay they were in somewhat control. I mean, it was a one possession game, but Tampa Bay was going up and down the field, and they just Mayfield just kind of bumbles around, fumbles a ball, giving the ball in the red zone. And I don't think they did much of anything to improve the defense. And it's probably, you could argue, it's even worse. I mean, Allen didn't play a lot last season. So, okay, he wasn't playing all year. That's one thing. But I have no idea why they cut him just to sign someone who's a good bit worse for almost the same salary. I'm like, what is even the point of this? Again, I thought they were going to make big moves. I was happy that I was underwhelmed by what they did.
Well, they're learning their way. They still have several years of on-the-job training to sort it all out.
Yeah,
I
I mean,
mean,
and the rookie
it's a whole new
quarterback for a couple
organization.
years. Yeah, they're not a
Yeah.
rookie quarterback, but they're on a rookie quarterback contract for the next couple of years. But ultimately, once you eat through that, I mean, we're in year 2 right now. They have 2 more years. Maybe they're smart about it and they give them a massive extension. After year 3, But at this point, if Daniels doesn't drop off, it's going to be a $70 million contract. But yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, they will be competitive. I think they got extremely lucky last year to convert 80, 85% of your fourth downs, like the highest percentage in literally whatever it was, 40, 50 years. Like that is the definition of regression to the mean. That will not happen again. They're going to if they are as aggressive as they were last year, this year, they're going to lose a good amount of games simply because they're not converting at that clip. The Eagles are the best team in the division, obviously the favorite. I think we're about even with Washington, where you're thinking they'll probably win about 9 or 10 games. Could shift, a little bit up or down depending on injuries and a little bit of luck and whatever. And the Giants, obviously, are clearly the worst team in the division. So we'll see. It should be interesting. I mean, I think, like we said with Booze, the changes to the offensive line and how that looks, I think it's going to be obvious to us within the first couple games of the season.
Yeah.
If it's not obvious, I think
Yeah.
we'll know.
Yeah. I mean, I expect wholesale changes in the way our offensive line looks and blocks.
Mm-hmm.
What we did last year was awful. It was
Mm-hmm.
about as rudimentary. Here's your concepts. Here's your Solari offensive line. It was bad. So if they take the guys they have and make it work, I'll be excited for it. But you're right. It will be evident very soon. They're either going to be stumbling all over themselves, trying to figure it out, or they'll click. Because I mean, from what I've studied and seen from both Adams and the OL coach, but
Riley.
yeah, Riley, but they're very precise in what they do. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, you look at K State's offensive line and how they explode out of a block. It's confusing. You don't know where these guys are going, and they make it work. So whether or not our guys are smart enough to do that, we'll see.
And if they're not, I think they'll probably play someone else. Like I'm very curious.
Yeah,
Like one of the main reasons I'm not too down on Guyton, he did a lot of stupid shit last year, a lot of stupid penalties.
yeah,
I think
I'm
he
not.
was just so discombobulated, and the offensive line coaching or philosophy, whatever you want to call it, was so bad. It just like you said, so rudimentary. And the only reason it started working late in the year is because they seemingly basically just decided we're just going to run 3 yards in a cloud of dust. We're just going to run straight downhill. Like there was no real
That
nuance
was
to
all
it.
Dowdle talent,
Yeah,
man. I don't know what
Dowdle
you're
was
talking.
grinding out
Dowdle
4.4
talent.
yards carry. Yeah,
Dowdle talent, man.
yeah,
He was
Dowdle talent
grinding
exactly.
he was making that shit happen.
Yeah, so I think I'm very interested to see how Guyton looks in particular, and I think if he's committing a penalty every 3 quarters, stupid false starts and things like that, I think it's very likely that they play Smith at left tackle or even Richards
They'll never
and
move
shift
him.
guys around a little
They'll never move Smith. I don't know why they
bit.
won't, but they never will. If they haven't done it by now, they're not going to. They're not going to suddenly turn around now and make him left tackle and make him earn the millions he's getting.
Well,
So,
that gets then into the extent to which Jerry and Steven are manipulating decisions, which obviously they are to some extent. But I do like with a brand new everything offensive coordinator who is an offensive line coach, all these things.
well,
I
here's the
do
perfect
think
time
it's
to do it,
possible.
but they won't do it.
Exactly. Yeah.
Perfect time to do it is make him your starting left tackle starting in camp. And you draft or plug in another guy at left guard. But they're not going to do that. They're going to leave the left guard and they're going to continue with this experiment where Guyton
Mhm.
needs to be a right tackle. Let's be honest with y'all. No, he's not going to be a
He
left
might
tackle.
he might need to be a right
No,
tackle.
he will. No, he won't. He won't. He'll be a good right tackle. Look, I
No, I
mean,
said he
he's not.
might need to be a right tackle. Yeah, I
Oh,
know.
he has to be a right tackle. They can't leave him out there. But they're not going to move Tyler Smith.
Yeah, probably not.
They already made
Maybe
their.
extend him as a guard. Maybe
Oh,
they will.
you're gonna move him to left tackle when his contract's coming due? I don't think so.
Yeah,
Well, I was going to say, if
exactly.
these coaches actually have the ability to do what they want to do,
They,
no telling what might happen.
but no,
But
they're gonna
they don't.
pay him you're a guard. You're the best guard. You're not the third best tackle, but you're the best guard.
Going back to the draft though, I was very interested in the. I mean, they haven't going like if we go back like 5, 6 years, they would draft off of their 30 visits way more than they have in the last couple of years. And I think maybe the COVID situation kind of shifted that a little bit. Since then they haven't been quite as like married to their 30 visit list when they're drafting, but Membu and Banks were two that really stuck out to me, and I was like, this is a little interesting. I wasn't expecting that.
And I'd be mad if they took either one of them, honestly. Unless that's the. I mean, Membo is probably not going to. He's a little hotter than Banks. Banks is a guy that has been
But he also hasn't
slipping.
played left tackle. Membu hasn't played left tackle either. He's a pure
No,
right tackle.
neither. Yeah, I mean, why? Either one of them. Why?
Yeah, I think Membu's probably going to go before we pick, so that's not too much of a concern. Banks, I think Banks, if I had to guess, is probably a candidate if we trade down. I would be surprised if they took him at 12. I think it would take a really strange board to take him.
A retarded board, yes.
It would be something really weird.
They almost have to draft a wide receiver in the first 2 rounds, without question.
Because there's just not that depth where you can pick something up in the third. Well, possibly the third, I guess. But with all those
that's what we've
fifths
been trying to do. Other than Lamb, look at what we drafted. Tolbert. You can get some kid from South Alabama in the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th round, whatever.
Kind of have a soft spot for Flournoy.
No, I don't. He is what he is. None of these guys are all of a sudden going to step forward and be a number 2. It's not going to happen. And if you're going to have a strong running game, you better have at least one wide receiver who's a good blocker. Lamb tries, but no. You got to have a good blocking wide receiver, good blocking tight end. I don't think we have all those pieces. So we have to see how all that works out.
I mean, we follow this team closely. I do truly think they are like laser focused on receiver. We know how they operate. They don't.
So
they don't keep secrets well. You know,
No.
Stephen Jones literally came out and said we want juice at receiver. They didn't address it really at all during free agency like they did. I mean, you look even on the offensive line, they signed this guy Jones to for them, a relatively sizable deal compared to what we give, free agents. They gave him $3.5 million or something. Signing Paris Campbell for the league minimum doesn't mean shit. And that's like really the only position of need they purely ignored. Like they signed Campbell way after the fact, almost like an afterthought. They traded for Elam pretty quickly. They signed Jones pretty quickly. They signed the running backs pretty quickly. They signed 1 million defensive ends within the first few days. Receiver, they almost completely ignored. I do think they truly are locked in. I mean, they brought in every single receiver who's in the first round conversation on top of that as a 30 visit. So I really do think they're locked into that.
The only guy I really don't have a good feel for is Burton.
Yeah, me neither.
No, I would not take him at 12. Absolutely,
no. He didn't run routes. He didn't run routes in college.
But why? I mean, why'd they bring him? He would be out of all the receivers. He'd be the guy that I would think they would not be interested in.
I think as a trade down candidate, I don't think they're going to take him or Egbuka at 12. Honestly.
No. I don't think they're that. Down. Yeah, but again, they seem to be. In other years, they would bring in, depending on what position they were in the draft and where they were, they would bring in someone that kind of, fit. A lot of these guys really don't fit their draft slot. You know what I mean? They're not like, oh my God, these are the 12 best players. But I don't know. Maybe it's just things that changed how it used to be. But you can't telegraph it off this group.
Well, the other thing is, I'm
still waiting. I'm still waiting for the bozos, that the late round draft picks and stuff like. What was that guy's name? Jordan Carroll or whatever he was. There's some bozo that they brought in under Marinelli, and he was a 30 visit, and we picked him in the 7th round or something. He was a total loser, but I don't see any of those.
Something.
It was Carroll. His last name was Carroll or something. I don't know.
He's like, was he from like Colorado or something?
He's from Colorado. Yeah, he's from Colorado. Yeah. But there's none of those. At least from what I've seen, there's none of those guys. They're all like 5th rounder. Tootin would probably be the lowest ranked player that I think they're bringing. But I don't think they've posted the entire 30 list yet.
I don't think we've seen the whole thing yet. But the other thing, I don't think they brought in a single receiver who's projected to go like mid rounds. It's all like first round, maybe Burden. maybe
Yeah,
the Savion Williams, but I don't know if he was a Dallas State guy or not. But
he's a Dallas State guy.
aside from that, like the receivers are literally just the top like four receivers, and that's it.
Yeah, you're not going after. There are some good. Kyle Williams, for example, Washington State
Mm,
kid,
I like him a
very
lot.
good. Oh,
Yeah.
very good receiver. Then that would be someone he could you could plug him in the slot and be done.
Hmm.
But it's just
Yeah, that's
odd.
why I'm not married to receiver in the first per se. I think
Mm,
they probably are, and I mean, I
yeah,
really do like McMillan. I really do like Golden. I don't think either one of them is a reach. I think they're both fully deserving to go top 15 ish, and that's fine. But that's why I'd be more than happy. Like for me, if I was in charge, I would take Harmon at 12, and I would move forward from there. Specifically with someone like Kyle Williams in mind, in probably the third, and then I'm looking at receiver. I'm looking at these different
yeah,
things.
yeah.
So, but that's I don't think it's gonna happen.
Well, look at y'all. I gotta roll. I hate to
Yeah.
say this on a podcast, but I gotta get out.